Money has a way of revealing people's true nature, especially when it belongs to someone else. I learned this the hard way when my husband Michael called me at work, his voice dripping with that fake sweetness I'd grown to despise. "Elena, darling, we need to discuss tonight's dinner arrangements." I pressed my phone closer to my ear, already sensing the trap beneath his words. "What arrangements?" "I've invited the entire family to LeBlanc. Mother and father are flying in specially for this. You'll need to cover the expenses. About 25,000 should do it." The number hit me like a slap. $25,000? Are you insane? "Now, darling, don't be difficult. I've already made the reservations. You wouldn't want to embarrass me in front of everyone, would you?" I gripped my desk, knuckles white. "My credit card is maxed out, Michael. You know this because you're the one who maxed it." His laugh crackled through the phone, sharp and dismissive. "Oh, that old story again? I told you I'd pay you back. Besides, you have other cards." "Which I've canceled." The words came out before I could stop them. The silence that followed was deafening. When he spoke again, his voice had lost all pretense of warmth. "You did what?" "You heard me. I canceled them all except one, and that's for emergencies only." "You stupid bitch." The mask dropped completely now. "Do you have any idea what you've done? I needed those cards." I felt a strange calm settle over me. For what, Michael? More gifts for Sophie? Or was it Hannah this time? Another silence, longer this time. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head, calculating his next move. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said finally, his voice steady but strained. "But you will show up tonight, and you will find a way to pay for this dinner. Otherwise, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of woman you really are." I laughed, surprising myself with how hollow it sounded. "And what kind of woman is that?" "A paranoid, controlling wife who can't handle her husband's success. I wonder what mother will think when she hears about your little jealous fantasies." Margaret, his mother, had always taken his side. Even when the evidence of his lies stared her in the face, she'd find ways to excuse him. Robert, his father, wasn't much better. Too wrapped up in his business empire to notice his son's growing web of deceit. "Fine," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I'll be there. 8 o'clock, right? 7:30? Don't be late." He hung up without waiting for my response. I sat there, staring at my phone, feeling something shift inside me. For 3 years, I'd watched him drain my accounts, make excuses, and gaslight me into believing I was the problem. 3 years of suspicious charges, mysterious business meetings, and perfume scents that weren't mine. Opening my drawer, I pulled out the manila envelope I'd been saving for the right moment. Inside were credit card statements, hotel receipts, and photographs. So many photographs. Sophie leaving his office late at night. Hannah at expensive restaurants, wearing jewelry bought with my money. Each piece of evidence carefully collected, dated, and organized. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel, my oldest friend. "You okay? You look like you're about to murder someone." I glanced up to see him watching me through the glass partition of his office, concern etched on his face. I typed back, "Not murder, something much worse." Tonight, at LeBlanc, surrounded by his family and their expectations, I would finally show Michael exactly what kind of woman I really was. And it wouldn't be the meek, forgiving wife he'd taken advantage of for so long. I touched the envelope gently, like a weapon I was finally ready to use. 7:30 couldn't come soon enough. LeBlanc's crystal chandeliers cast judgmental shadows across the white tablecloth as I watched Michael work the room. He moved between his parents with practiced charm, touching his mother's shoulder, laughing at his father's jokes. The perfect son. I gripped my wine glass tighter, knowing what was coming. "Elena, darling, you're so quiet tonight." Margaret's voice carried that hint of criticism she'd perfected over the years. "Is everything all right?" "Just tired from work," I said, forcing a smile. "The firm's been busy. Perhaps if you focused more on home life." She let the suggestion hang in the air like poison. Michael swooped in, all teeth and tailored suit. Mother, you know how dedicated Elena is to her career. His hand found my shoulder, fingers digging in slightly, warning me. Speaking of careers, Robert cut in. Michael tells me you've been having some financial difficulties? The restaurant seemed to still. I met Michael's gaze across the table, saw the slight shake of his head. Don't you dare. Actually, I said, reaching for my purse. I wanted to discuss that. Michael's wine glass crashed to the floor. Red liquid spread across the pristine carpet like blood. Clumsy me, he laughed, but his eyes were hard. Elena, help me clean this up. He practically dragged me toward the restroom corridor, grip bruising my arm. What do you think you're doing? Telling the truth for once? I yanked free. Someone has to. You embarrass me tonight, and I swear. You'll what? Max out another of my cards? Sleep with another colleague? His face went still. That dangerous stillness I'd learned to recognize. You're hysterical. This is exactly why I can't trust you with our finances. Our finances? I laughed. You mean my savings that you've been bleeding dry? Everything I've done has been for us, for our future. He stepped closer, voice dropping. But you're too selfish to see that. Michael, Margaret's voice, floated from around the corner. Is everything okay? He immediately softened his expression, the mask sliding back into place. Fine, Mother. Elena's just feeling unwell. I watched him transform, saw how easily he switched between personas. It made me sick. Back at the table, Robert was deep in conversation about the company's latest acquisition. The merger's going through next month. Michael's been instrumental in making it happen. Yes, I said, unfolding my napkin. He's been working very late hours recently, especially with Sophie in accounting. Michael's fork clattered against his plate. Margaret frowned. Sophie? I don't believe I've met her. Oh, she's quite memorable, I continued, ignoring Michael's glare. Blonde, 28, favors Cartier jewelry, particularly the bracelet Michael bought her last month. Elena, Michael's voice was warning thunder. Or was that for Hannah? I get confused sometimes, tracking all these charges. Robert's bushy eyebrows drew together. What exactly are you implying? Nothing, Father, Michael cut in. Elena's been under a lot of stress lately, imagining things. Am I? I pulled out my phone, scrolling through photos. Should we discuss the hotel receipts, the mysterious weekend conferences that only you seem to attend? Margaret's hand flew to her throat. Michael, she's lying, he snapped, but sweat beaded his forehead. She's always been jealous of my success. Success? I felt eerily calm now. Is that what we're calling fraud these days? The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Robert's face darkened. What fraud? Michael stood abruptly, his chair scraping back. This dinner is over. Elena's clearly not well. Sit down. Robert's voice cut through the restaurant's murmur. Both of you. I watched Michael's face as he slowly sank back into his chair. For the first time, I saw fear crack through his perfect facade. Now, Robert continued, someone is going to tell me exactly what's going on with my company's finances. I reached for my purse, where the manila envelope waited. Michael's hand shot out to stop me, but it was too late. The evidence of his betrayal was already spreading across the pristine tablecloth, like the wine stain on the carpet behind us. Sometimes karma needs a little push, and I was done being patient. The silence in Robert's home office felt like a noose tightening. I watched him examine each credit card statement, each hotel receipt, his face growing darker with every page. Michael sat beside me, leg bouncing, his usual swagger replaced by something closer to fear. $200,000. Robert's voice was deadly quiet, transferred from company accounts to personal expenses over the past year. I can explain, Michael started, but Robert held up his hand. To jewelry stores, hotels, restaurants. He picked up a particular receipt. A weekend at the Four Seasons, under business development. Margaret stood by the window, her back to us all. She hadn't spoken since we'd left the restaurant. The company's doing well, Michael said. I've earned some perks. Perks? Robert slammed his hand on the desk. You're stealing from your own family. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to a specific email. There's more. Michael lunged for my phone, but I was faster. Elena, don't. An email from Sophie to Hannah. I read, my voice steady despite my racing heart, discussing how to divide their bonuses from Michael. Margaret turned sharply. What bonuses? Hush money, I said, to keep quiet about their affairs. You're lying. Michael's voice cracked. She's making this up, Mother. You know how jealous. Stop. Margaret's voice was ice. I saw the way Sophie looked at you at the Christmas party. I didn't want to believe. A knock at the door made us all jump. Ethan, Michael's business partner, stepped in, his face grim. Sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation. The SEC is asking questions about recent transfers. The color drained from Michael's face. What questions? They've flagged several large transactions as suspicious. Something about patterns consistent with embezzlement. Robert stood slowly, his hands shaking. You didn't just steal from us. You put the entire company at risk. I was going to pay it back. Michael's composure finally shattered. Everything was under control until he jabbed a finger at me, started meddling. Under control. I pulled out one final document. Like the gambling debts you've been hiding? Margaret gasped. Robert snatched the paper from my hands, his eyes widening as he read. $500,000. His voice was barely a whisper. To underground betting rings. Michael slumped in his chair, defeated. I had a system. I just needed more time. Time, Ethan interrupted. We don't have time. The SEC wants answers by Monday. Get out. Robert's voice was like gravel. Get out of my house and don't come back until you've spoken to our lawyers. Father, please, now. Michael stood on shaky legs, looking to his mother for support. But Margaret had turned back to the window, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. As he stumbled toward the door, he paused beside me. You've destroyed everything, he hissed. I hope you're happy. I met his gaze steadily. No, Michael, you did this yourself. I just showed everyone who you really are. After he left, Robert collapsed into his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 62 years. Elena, I owe you an apology. We all do. Don't. I stood, gathering my things. I didn't do this for apologies. I did it because someone had to stop him. What happens now? Margaret asked, finally turning to face us. Ethan cleared his throat. The company will need to conduct an internal audit, and Michael, well, he'll likely face criminal charges. I headed for the door, pausing with my hand on the knob. There's a recording, I said quietly, of Michael threatening me when I discovered the first affair, and documentation of every unauthorized charge, every manipulation. When you're ready to move forward with legal action, call me. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. You okay? I looked back at the house, where I'd just destroyed my husband's carefully constructed world of lies. The strange thing was, I didn't feel victorious, just tired, and ready for whatever came next. No, I typed back, but I will be. Because this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of Michael's long fall from grace, and I intended to watch every moment of it. The police station's fluorescent lights made everything look sickly and unreal. I sat across from Detective Morris, watching her flip through the evidence I'd gathered against Michael. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, even though I'd rehearsed this moment countless times. Mrs. Anderson, she said, setting down a particularly damning bank statement. This goes beyond simple fraud. I know, my voice sounded hollow, even to me. We're looking at potential money laundering, tax evasion, and, she paused, studying a new document. Connections to illegal gambling operations. Your husband's been busy. The word husband made my stomach turn. Ex-husband, soon. My phone buzzed. Daniel again. Sophie's looking for you. Says it's urgent. I ignored it. Sophie could wait. I'd given her enough already. The recordings, the paper trail, her precious immunity deal. Detective Morris leaned forward. There's something else. We found transfers to offshore accounts we can't trace, large ones. That's not possible. I'd tracked every penny. I would have seen, these are sophisticated, professional. She slid a paper across the desk. Someone's been helping him hide money for years. Someone who knows what they're doing. The implications hit me like a physical blow. I thought of Ethan, Michael's supposedly loyal business partner, who'd seemed so shocked by the SEC investigation. My phone buzzed again. This time, a text from an unknown number. You don't know the whole story. Meet me at Riverside Park, now. E. Mrs. Anderson, Detective Morris was watching me carefully. Is there something you're not telling me? I stood, gathering my coat. I need some air. We're not finished. I'll be back. There's just something I need to check. The park was deserted this late, wind whipping off the river. Ethan stood by the railing, looking older than his 40 years. You helped him. I didn't bother with pleasantries. All this time you knew. It's not that simple. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Michael has something on me, on all of us. What do you mean, all of us? The company's been dirty for years, Robert included. He laughed bitterly. Why do you think Michael got away with so much? His father taught him everything he knows. My world tilted sideways. Robert, the stern patriarch who'd seemed so shocked by his son's crimes. You're lying. Check the offshore account, ending in 4891. That's where the real money is. Robert's retirement fund, built on decades of fraud. My phone buzzed again. Sophie. Michael knows you're talking to the police. He's going to pin everything on you. Claims you were the mastermind. Has documents to prove it. Why are you telling me this? I asked Ethan. Because tomorrow, the SEC isn't just coming for Michael. They're coming for all of us. He handed me a USB drive. This has everything. Every transaction. Every player. Including proof that you had nothing to do with it. Why help me now? Because you're the only one who tried to stop it. He turned to leave, then paused. Elena, be careful. Michael's not the only one with something to lose. I drove home in a daze. The USB drive, burning a hole in my pocket. My phone kept buzzing. Daniel, Sophie, unknown numbers. I ignored them all. At home, I poured a glass of wine with trembling hands and plugged in the drive. Document after document filled my screen, each one worse than the last. Robert's signature, Margaret's silent complicity, Ethan's careful bookkeeping, a family business built on lies, with Michael as just the latest in a long line of corrupt inheritors. A knock at my door made me jump. Through the peephole, I saw Margaret, her face streaked with tears. Elena, please, we need to talk. I rested my forehead against the door, thinking of all the times she'd defended Michael, all the years she'd known exactly what was happening. Elena, her voice cracked. They're arresting Robert tomorrow. Michael's threatening to tell them everything, about all of us, about you. I thought of Detective Morris, waiting for my return, of the evidence I'd so carefully gathered, never realizing I was only seeing the surface of a much darker truth. My phone buzzed one final time. Michael, last chance to make a deal, darling. Meet me at midnight, or everyone goes down, including you. I looked at the USB drive, then at my phone. In trying to expose one man's lies, I'd stumbled into a conspiracy that could destroy everyone involved, myself included. The question was, how far was I willing to go to see justice done? The hotel bar was nearly empty when Sophie slid into the seat beside me. Her designer perfume couldn't mask the fear rolling off her in waves. They're watching all of us, she whispered, fingers trembling around her martini glass. Michael's not just angry anymore, he's desperate. I studied her perfectly manicured nails, remembering the credit card statements for the salon visits I'd paid for. Why should I care? Because Hannah's dead. The words hung between us like smoke. My glass stopped halfway to my lips. Car accident, Sophie continued, her voice barely audible. Last night. Very convenient timing, don't you think? My phone buzzed. Daniel, where are you? Michael's looking for you. He's not alone. What did Hannah know? I asked Sophie, ignoring the message. Everything. She glanced over her shoulder. The offshore accounts, the gambling debts, The real reason Robert's been moving money through shell companies. She was going to talk to the SEC. The bartender drifted closer. Sophie fell silent until he passed. Michael called me this morning, she said. Offered to clear my debts if I signed an affidavit saying you were behind everything, that you manipulated company records, forced him to make those transfers. My laugh sounded hollow. And you're telling me this out of the goodness of your heart? I'm telling you, because Hannah was my friend. Her mascara smeared as she wiped her eyes. And because they're coming for you next. My phone buzzed again. Margaret. Robert's gone. Emptied the accounts. Left a note saying he's sorry. The room seemed to tilt. When did Hannah tell you about the accounts? She didn't. Sophie's smile was sharp as broken glass. But you just confirmed they exist. I stood so quickly my chair scraped across the floor. Sophie grabbed my wrist, her nails digging in. Sit down, she hissed. Look at the man by the door, the one pretending to read. I saw him now. Dark suit, earpiece poorly hidden. Another one at the bar, watching us in the mirror. Michael's not working alone anymore, Sophie said. The people he owes money to, they want their investment protected. Hannah threatened that protection. My phone, unknown number. Your friend Daniel is very cooperative when properly motivated. Midnight, the old warehouse. Come alone. Let go of my arm, I said quietly. Sophie released me, leaving crescent marks in my skin. You started this war, Elena. Did you really think there wouldn't be casualties? I walked out, forcing myself not to run. The man by the door spoke into his sleeve as I passed. In the parking lot, a black SUV idled 2 spaces from my car. My phone rang. Michael. Hello, darling. His voice was silk over steel. Having drinks with friends? What did you do to Daniel? Nothing permanent, yet. A pause. You know, it's funny. All this time trying to expose my secrets, and you never wondered about your precious friend's connection to everything. What are you talking about? Ask him about the offshore account transfers. Ask him who really helped set them up. Michael's laugh was soft. Oh, wait, you can't. He's a bit tied up at the moment. The SUV's engine revved. Midnight, Elena, bring the USB drive and every copy of the evidence you've collected, or Daniel won't be the only one paying for your curiosity. The line went dead. I sat in my car, hands gripping the wheel, mind racing. Daniel, my oldest friend, my confidant through all of this, had he been playing both sides? Another text from Sophie. Whatever you're thinking of doing, don't. Hannah thought she could outsmart them too. I started the engine, watching the SUV pull out behind me in the rearview mirror. 6 hours until midnight. 6 hours to decide who to trust, who to sacrifice, who to save. My phone buzzed one last time. Ethan. SEC moved up the timeline. They're raiding the offices tomorrow morning. Whatever you're going to do it now. I thought of Hannah, of Daniel, of all the pieces I'd thought I understood. The revenge I'd wanted had seemed so simple at first. Now it was a hydra, growing 2 new heads for everyone I cut off. The SUV stayed 3 cars behind as I drove, its headlights watching like patient eyes. I had until midnight to make a choice. Save myself, save Daniel, or burn the whole thing down and hope I survived the flames. The warehouse waited in the distance. A dark promise against the setting sun. The warehouse air reeked of rust and betrayal. Daniel sat tied to a chair in the center, his face a mess of bruises. 2 men in dark suits flanked him, while Michael leaned against a stack of crates, examining his phone with casual indifference. Right on time, he said, not looking up. Did you bring it? I held up the USB drive. Let him go first. That's not how this works anymore. Michael finally met my gaze, and I saw something new there, something unhinged. Show me what's on it. One of the suits produced a laptop. I plugged in the drive, watching Michael's face as he scrolled through the files. His expression darkened. Where are the offshore accounts, the transfer records? Gone. I forced myself to smile, just like Robert. Michael's hand shot out, grabbing my throat. Don't play games with me, not now. Michael, Daniel's voice was hoarse. She doesn't know everything. I never told her. Shut up. Michael's grip tightened. You had one job. Keep her distracted, keep her close, feed me information. And you couldn't even do that right. The truth hit me like a physical blow. Daniel's constant support, his convenient presence throughout my investigation. I'd been so blind. Elena. Daniel's eyes were pleading. I had to. They threatened my family. But I tried to protect you. By helping them track me, my laugh came out as a wheeze against Michael's grip. By reporting every move I made, enough. Michael released me, turning to the suits. Search her car, she must have backup copies somewhere. As they left, Michael's phone buzzed. His face went pale as he read the message. The SEC. He threw the phone against the wall. They're moving in tonight. Someone tipped them off. His eyes narrowed. What did you do? Nothing. I rubbed my throat. But Sophie's been busy. Sophie. For the first time, real fear crossed his face. What are you talking about? Check your precious offshore account, the one ending in 4891. I watched comprehension dawn. She transferred everything an hour ago to Hannah's sister. Hannah's dead, he snapped. Yes, and her sister's a federal prosecutor. I felt a cold satisfaction seeing him unravel. Sophie made a deal, full immunity in exchange for everything she knows, which is apparently a lot more than you thought. Michael lunged for me, but Daniel somehow broke free, tackling him. They crashed into the crates as the suits rushed back in, weapons drawn. Nobody move, one shouted. But Michael was beyond reason. He grabbed something from the fallen crates, a metal pipe, and swung it at Daniel's head. The crack echoed through the warehouse. Daniel crumpled. No, I screamed, running to him. Blood pooled beneath his head. It's your fault, Michael was saying, his voice distant and strange. All of this. You couldn't just stay quiet, play your part. Now look what you made me do. Sirens wailed in the distance. The suits exchanged glances and fled, leaving Michael standing over us, pipe still in hand. They're coming for you, I said, cradling Daniel's motionless form. All of them. SEC, FBI, Hannah's sister. It's over. Nothing's over. He raised the pipe again. I can still fix this. One more accident. One more loose end. The warehouse doors burst open. Margaret stood there, holding a gun with shaking hands. Michael, she said, her voice breaking. Put it down. Mother? He laughed, high and unnatural. Come to save your precious daughter-in-law? I came to stop you from becoming your father. She stepped closer. Robert killed himself an hour ago, in a hotel room in Singapore. I won't watch you follow him. Michael's face contorted. You're lying. The notes in my car, along with copies of everything. Every crime. Every cover-up. Going back 30 years. Her finger tightened on the trigger. Drop it, Michael, please. The pipe clattered to the floor. As police lights flooded the warehouse, I held Daniel's cooling body and watched my husband collapse into himself, becoming something small and broken under the weight of his own destruction. The revenge I'd wanted had cost me everything. Daniel, my safety, my belief in justice. And as the officers swarmed in, I realized the true price of vengeance wasn't paid by its target, but by everyone caught in its wake. The night wasn't over, but I was. The courthouse corridor felt like a funeral home. I sat on the hard bench, watching Michael pace in his expensive suit, all his swagger reduced to nervous energy. The SEC investigation had frozen his accounts, but Lily's diamond bracelet still glinted on her wrist as she whispered in his ear. Sophie appeared at the far end of the hall, flanked by federal agents. Her designer heels clicked like a countdown. Last chance, Elena. Michael's voice was low, desperate. Tell them you orchestrated everything. I'll make sure you're taken care of. Like you took care of Hannah. His face twitched. Lily stepped back, suddenly uncertain. Michael, she asked. What's she talking about? Nothing, darling. Elena's just bitter. Show her the phone, Lily. I stood, feeling strangely calm. The one he bought you last week. Check the GPS history for the night Hannah died. Lily's perfectly manicured hands trembled as she pulled out her phone. Michael lunged for it, but one of the agents stepped between them. "That's enough, Mr. Anderson." Margaret's voice cut through the tension. She approached from the courtroom, holding a manila envelope. "The judge is ready for us." "Mother, please." Michael's mask cracked completely. "You can't do this to your own son. You did this yourself." She handed the envelope to the federal prosecutor. "Everything's here. 30 years of fraud, including Robert's suicide note. And this," she pulled out a single photograph, "is from the traffic camera near Hannah's accident." The image showed Michael's car, the timestamp matching the night of Hannah's death. "You said you were with me that night," Lily whispered, backing away. "You said—" "He says a lot of things." Sophie had reached us, her testimony folder clutched like a shield. "Ask him about the offshore account he set up in your name. The one he's using to frame you for tax evasion." The color drained from Lily's face. "What?" "It's what he does," I said quietly. "Uses people until they're no longer useful, then discards them. Hannah threatened to expose him, so she had an accident. Daniel got too close to the truth, so—" "Shut up." Michael's composure shattered. He grabbed Lily's arm. Tell them I was with you that night." But Lily was already pulling away, tears streaking her makeup. "You killed her? And tried to set me up to take the fall?" "The judge is waiting." The prosecutor stepped forward. "Miss Chen's testimony about the offshore accounts matches our evidence exactly. Combined with Mrs. Anderson's documentation and the new evidence from Mrs. Margaret Anderson." Michael's laugh was hollow. "Evidence from my own mother. She's grief-stricken, delusional." "I'm quite lucid," Margaret interrupted. "Lucid enough to wear a wire during our last 3 conversations, including your confession about Hannah." The hallway went silent. Michael looked around wildly, like a trapped animal. His eyes landed on me. "You." He moved faster than the agents could react, his hands finding my throat. "You turned them all against me." Then Lily's phone clattered to the floor, video playing. Michael's own voice confessing to Hannah's murder, GPS data confirming his location. He'd accidentally recorded everything on the phone he'd given her, thinking he was covering his tracks. The agents pulled him off me as he screamed accusations, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. Lily fled down the hallway, Sophie smirked, and Margaret just looked tired. "The thing about lies, Michael," I rasped, rubbing my throat, "is that they multiply, like a cancer, until they destroy everything they touch." "Mrs. Anderson?" The prosecutor gestured toward the courtroom. "We're ready for your testimony." I gathered my evidence folder, thinner now, most of its contents already submitted to the SEC and FBI. The case against Michael was airtight: fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, and now murder. His own arrogance had built the trap. I'd just helped him walk into it. "Elena." His voice was different now, small, almost childlike. "Please, don't do this." I thought of Daniel in his hospital bed, still unconscious, of Hannah's sister waiting inside to see justice done, of all the lives Michael had casually destroyed in his pursuit of power and control. "I'm not doing anything, Michael. This is just karma catching up." The courtroom doors opened, and I walked through without looking back. Behind me, I heard him break down completely, his sobs echoing through the corridor like the ghost of everything he'd lost. Sometimes revenge isn't about what you do. It's about stepping back and letting someone's own actions destroy them. The prison visiting room smelled of disinfectant and defeat. Michael sat across from me in his orange jumpsuit, the confident mask finally stripped away. Through the window behind him, snow fell on the exercise yard, covering everything in clean white silence. 20 years, he said, his voice hollow, plus restitution. I placed the divorce papers on the metal table between us. "Sign them." His hand trembled as he reached for the pen. Was it worth it? Destroying everything we built. We didn't build anything, Michael. You constructed a fantasy, and I lived in it until I couldn't anymore. The pen scratched across paper, Each signature felt like a key turning in a lock. Daniel's awake, I said, watching his reaction. He remembers everything. Michael's pen paused. I never meant to get caught, to kill Hannah, to ruin your father. I collected the signed papers. That's the problem. You never meant for any of it to happen, but you kept making choices that led here. Elena, he reached across the table, but I pulled back. What happened to us? You happened to us. And now you're happening to yourself. Outside, Margaret waited in her car, engine running against the cold. She'd aged years in months, but her eyes were clearer now. It's done? She asked as I slid into the passenger seat. I nodded, watching the prison shrink in the side mirror. He signed everything, the restitution agreement, too. Hannah's sister gets control of the recovered assets. Good. She pulled onto the highway. The company board voted this morning. They're restructuring, keeping the legitimate parts. Ethan's cooperating with the investigation. My phone buzzed. A message from Sophie. Lily's gone to the DA, says she has more recordings. I deleted it without responding. Sophie had played her part, but I was done with all of them. The house sold, Margaret said quietly. Above asking price. The house where Michael had built his web of lies, where I'd lived in beautiful ignorance until the cracks appeared. Someone else would sleep there now, unaware of the ghosts in every room. What will you do now? Margaret asked. I touched the envelope in my bag. Not the divorce papers, but the other one. The one containing proof of my own secret. Documentation of every dollar I'd managed to recover. Traced through shell companies and offshore accounts. Money that even Michael didn't know existed. Hidden by Robert before his death. Start over, I said. Somewhere new, she nodded, understanding more than I'd said. You know, revenge is supposed to feel empty. That's what they say, that it doesn't bring peace. This isn't about peace. I watched the snow erase the world outside. It's about truth. Everything hidden eventually comes to light. My phone buzzed again. Daniel. Coffee tomorrow. Doctor says I can have visitors now. I hesitated, then typed back. Rain check. Taking care of something first. Because Daniel had betrayed me too, even if he'd had his reasons. Even if he'd tried to protect me in the end. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ashes. Margaret pulled up to the airport departures terminal. You don't have to disappear, she said. Not everyone in your life was false. No, I gathered my single bag. But everyone was changed by it. She touched my arm before I could leave. The board transferred the recovered funds to your account this morning. Robert's hidden assets, legitimately claimed. You could rebuild here. I thought of Michael in his prison cell, of Sophie playing all sides, of Lily's desperate grab for immunity, of Daniel in his hospital bed, trying to make amends for choices that couldn't be undone. Sometimes, I said, rebuilding means walking away. The terminal was quiet, holiday travelers long gone. At the counter, my new passport waited, the final piece of preparation I'd made, while everyone else was focused on Michael's downfall. Because revenge wasn't just about destroying someone else's lies. It was about reclaiming your own truth. I checked in for a flight to a city I'd never seen, under a name that had never been touched by Michael's deceit. Behind me, Margaret's car disappeared into the snow, carrying the last witness to who I used to be. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't what you take from others, but what you keep for yourself. The power to write your own ending.
The day I walked away from a 7-figure career started like any other, with me failing someone I loved. Again. My father's doctor had called at dawn, his voice carefully measured as he described the experimental treatment. It's our best option now, Mr. Park. But we need you here to authorize it. Tuesday morning. Tuesday, the exact day the Richardson merger was scheduled to finalize. 3 years of work, countless all-nighters, the partnership that awaited me just beyond the horizon, all culminating in a meeting I couldn't miss. Or so I thought. Absolutely not, Daniel. The board meeting is in 3 days, and the Richardson merger documents need your final review. Marcus Chen's voice cut through the office like a blade, his titanium watch catching the afternoon light as he gestured dismissively. I stood before his glass desk, medical leave request in hand, feeling my shoulders tense. "Mr. Chen, it's my father. The doctors are saying this might be our last chance to." "Your father has been dying for months," Marcus interrupted, his expression unchanged. "Somehow the company has managed to continue functioning during your frequent absences." The words stung more than they should have. My father, once the picture of health, had been declining steadily since his stroke 8 months ago. Every medical leave request had become increasingly difficult to obtain, with Marcus growing more impatient each time. "This is different," I said, keeping my voice steady. "The experimental treatment starts Tuesday. If I'm not there to authorize it and something goes wrong, then perhaps your sister could handle it? Or one of your many cousins." Marcus leaned back in his ergonomic chair, fingers steepled. "We're in the final stages of the biggest merger in this firm's history. Your father was a businessman. He would understand priorities." I felt something shift inside me. My father was a businessman who never missed a single family dinner in 30 years of running his company. He would absolutely not understand. Marcus's eyes narrowed. "Careful, Daniel. I've been very accommodating, but my patience has limits." 3 days, I said firmly. "I'll have my phone. I'll review the documents remotely. I just need to be physically present for my father. The Richardson family is flying in specifically to meet our entire executive team." Marcus stood, his 6'3" frame imposing by design. "Your absence would be noticed, and in this business, appearances matter." The answer is no. I looked down at the leave request in my hands, then at the photo on my desk visible through the glass wall of Marcus's office. My father and me at my law school graduation, both beaming with pride. Then I quit. The words left my mouth before I fully processed them. But once spoken, I felt an unexpected wave of relief. Marcus actually laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Don't be dramatic, Daniel. No one quits Thornwick and Chen over family matters." I placed my company badge on his desk. "I just did." "You're throwing away a partnership track," Marcus said, his amusement fading. "For what? To hold your father's hand? He's going to die whether you're there or not." I shouldered my bag, suddenly eager to be anywhere but there. "That's the point, Marcus. He's going to die, and I'm going to be there. Some things aren't negotiable." "Walk out that door, and don't bother asking for a reference," Marcus called after me, his voice rising. "In fact, I'll personally make sure every law firm in the city knows about your priorities." I turned back one last time. "Thank you for clarifying mine." I cleared my desk in less than 10 minutes, taking only my personal items and leaving behind the expensive fountain pen Marcus had given me when I made senior associate. Rachel from Human Resources hovered nearby, clearly uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, Daniel," she whispered as I packed my framed diplomas. "You know how he gets during big deals." "I do," I agreed, not looking up. "That's why I can't stay." The elevator ride to the lobby felt like descending from one world into another. Outside the gleaming skyscraper that had consumed the last 7 years of my life, the spring air felt startlingly fresh. I loosened my tie, hailed a cab, and gave the driver my father's address. My father's home, my childhood home, sat on a quiet street lined with oak trees just beginning to show their spring leaves. It was modest compared to what many of his colleagues owned, but he had always said a bigger house just meant more rooms to clean. What mattered was filling the space you had with things that mattered. Mrs. Abernathy, the home health nurse, opened the door before I could use my key. "Daniel, we weren't expecting you until the weekend." Her kind face registered surprise, then concern. "Is everything all right?" "It is now," I said, setting down my box of office belongings. "How is he today?" "Lucid. He had a good morning. He's in the sunroom." I found my father in his wheelchair by the windows, a chessboard set up before him, playing against himself as sunlight streamed across the polished pieces. At 72, Howard Park still had a full head of silver hair and the straight posture of the federal judge he had once been. The stroke had weakened his left side and slurred his speech, but his mind remained razor sharp. "Dad." He looked up, his face brightening. "Daniel." What a surprise. Each word came deliberately, hard-won. "No suit today." I glanced down, realizing I was still in my office clothes. Actually, I just left the office. At 2 in the afternoon, His right eyebrow rose, a familiar gesture from my childhood that usually preceded a lecture. I pulled up a chair across from him. I quit. My father's hand paused over a black knight. Thornwick and Chen. When I nodded, he asked simply, "Why?" "The Richardson merger is happening this week. Marcus wouldn't approve my leave for your treatment." Dad frowned. "So you quit a partnership track position at one of the top firms in the city?" "I did." "Good." His response caught me off guard. "Good." Marcus Chen, my father said carefully, each syllable precise, has been sacrificing other people's lives for his ambition since law school. I always wondered when you would notice. I stared at him. "You knew Marcus in law school? You never said anything when I took the job." "Some lessons," he replied with a small smile, "cannot be taught, only learned." He moved his knight, capturing a white pawn. "What will you do now?" "Be here for your treatment. Then, I don't know. Find another firm, maybe." My father studied the board. "Or you could open that legal aid clinic you talked about in law school, before Thornwick and Chen seduced you with their starting salary." I felt a flush of embarrassment that he remembered a dream I had all but forgotten. That was idealistic student talk. Was it? He gestured to a folder on the side table. "Open that." Inside was a deed to a small commercial building downtown, dated just 3 months ago, along with incorporation papers for Park Community Legal Services. "I don't understand." "I bought it after my diagnosis." He tapped his temple. "Stroke didn't affect my real estate instincts. Good location. Near the courthouse." "Dad, you can't just..." I trailed off, leafing through the documents with growing disbelief. "Can't just what?" "Spend my money how I please. I'm dying, Daniel. We both know it, even with this treatment." "You don't have that." I protested automatically. He fixed me with the same steady gaze that had assessed countless witnesses. "I was planning to tell you after the merger. I thought you deserved to finish what you started. But now," he gestured to the folder, "maybe it's time." I set the papers down, overwhelmed. "I don't know the first thing about running a legal aid clinic." "Nonsense. You've been doing pro bono work for years. Those immigrant cases, the tenant disputes." He moved another chess piece. "You think I don't read your emails?" "You've been reading my emails." "Mrs. Abernathy helps me with the computer." "Don't look so shocked. How else would I know what's happening in your life? You're always too busy to talk about work." The last phrase came with a knowing look. I couldn't argue with that. Our Sunday dinners had become increasingly brief, with me constantly checking my phone for emails from Marcus. "I always thought I'd have more time," I admitted quietly, "to figure out what I really wanted, to spend time with you, to do work that actually matters." "Time," my father said, his voice suddenly weaker, "is the one thing money cannot buy. Trust me, I've tried." He gestured to the chessboard. "Your move." The next morning, I drove my father to the hospital for his treatment. As we waited for the doctor, I scrolled through dozens of messages from former colleagues expressing shock at my departure. Some were supportive, others clearly fishing for gossip. Marcus had apparently told the office I'd had a breakdown due to personal stress. It was easier than admitting someone had chosen family over the firm. Dr. Mirza arrived with her team, explaining the experimental procedure one more time. The treatment was new, with promising results for stroke recovery, but not without risks. As my father's medical proxy, I needed to sign the final authorization. "Are you ready, Mr. Park?" she asked him. My father reached for my hand with his good one. "We both are." The procedure took 6 hours. I sat in the waiting room, alternating between researching legal aid clinic management on my laptop and fielding increasingly angry messages from Marcus about files I'd allegedly left unfinished. I blocked his number after the third threat of legal action. When Dr. Mirza finally emerged, her expression was cautiously optimistic. "The procedure went well. We won't know the full effects for a few days, but your father's vitals remained strong throughout." Recovery was slow but steady. By the end of the week, while the Richardson merger was dominating legal news headlines, my father was showing small improvements in his left side mobility. I spent days at the hospital and nights researching everything I needed to know about running a nonprofit legal service. 2 weeks later, I stood outside the building my father had purchased. It was a narrow 3-story structure sandwiched between a coffee shop and a bookstore, just 3 blocks from the county courthouse. The brick facade needed cleaning, and the interior required significant renovation, but I could see its potential. My phone rang. Rachel from HR. Daniela, I thought you should know, she said without preamble. The Richardson merger fell apart yesterday. What? How? Their legal team found inconsistencies in the documentation. Marcus is blaming everyone, especially you. He's saying you sabotaged the deal by leaving critical sections unfinished. I had done no such thing, but Marcus would never admit to his own oversights. I'm sorry for everyone there. I know how hard the team worked. That's not all, Rachel continued, lowering her voice. Judith Richardson specifically asked where you were. Apparently, her son is facing criminal charges in a DUI case. And she remembered you had criminal defense experience. She wanted you specifically. I leaned against the building, my building feeling a complex mix of emotions. Did Marcus tell her I quit? He told her you were on temporary leave. Daniel, Rachel hesitated. A lot of us are reconsidering our positions here. The way he handled this, blaming everyone else. There are other firms, Rachel, better ones. Or other options entirely, she replied. I heard about your father's building. Rumors travel fast. After we hung up, I unlocked the front door and stepped inside my future. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light from the tall windows. The space was empty except for a single desk in the center with a note propped against an old brass lamp. For when you're ready to make your own light. Dad. I set my bag down and pulled out my laptop. There was work to do. 6 months later, Park Community Legal Services opened its doors. My father sat beside me at the ribbon cutting. His mobility improved enough that he now used a cane instead of a wheelchair. The experimental treatment hadn't been a miracle cure, but it had given him back some independence and us more time. Our staff was small but committed. Myself, Rachel, who had indeed left Thornwick, and Chen, a recent law school graduate named Miguel who reminded me of myself before corporate law had narrowed my vision, and a paralegal named Diana who had previously worked at the public defender's office. Our first clients were primarily tenants facing eviction, immigrants navigating the complex legal system, and elderly residents dealing with predatory financial schemes. The work was demanding, the hours long, and the pay significantly less than what I had earned before. But each night, I went home tired in a way that felt right. The fatigue of meaningful work. 3 months after our opening, Judith Richardson walked through our door. Mr. Park, she said, extending her hand. I've been looking for you. I showed her to my modest office, a far cry from the corner view at Thornwick and Chen. How can I help you, Mrs. Richardson? My son's legal troubles were resolved, thankfully, she said, settling into the chair across from me. But it made me realize how quickly fortune can turn. My family has been blessed with considerable wealth, but not everyone has access to quality legal representation when they need it most. I nodded, uncertain where this was going. The Richardson Foundation would like to establish an endowment, she continued, for Park Community Legal Services, to ensure its continued operation and possible expansion. I stared at her, momentarily speechless. That's extremely generous, Mrs. Richardson. May I ask why us specifically? We're very new. She smiled. My father began as a legal aid attorney before building our family business. He never forgot those early days, helping people who had nowhere else to turn. She reached into her bag and withdrew a check. Consider this our investment in justice. The amount written on the check would ensure our clinic's operation for years to come. That evening, I brought the news and a bottle of champagne to my father's house. He listened as I explained the Richardson endowment, his eyes brightening with each detail. You see, he said after I finished, the universe has its own justice system. How do you mean? The merger that Marcus wouldn't let you leave for, the one that ultimately failed, brought you the very thing you need to succeed. He chuckled. Poetic, isn't it? Later, as we sat in the same sunroom where he had revealed his plans for the clinic, my father grew serious. I need to tell you something, Daniel. Something I should have said sooner. I set down my glass. What is it? I wasn't entirely truthful about why I bought that building. He adjusted his position, wincing slightly. Before my stroke, I was diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Dad. The stroke came before the Alzheimer's could progress noticeably. Strange blessing that, he smiled wryly. But I knew what was coming. I'd watched my own father disappear bit by bit. I couldn't bear the thought of you witnessing that while trapped in a job that was already taking you away from yourself. So the clinic was as much for you as for the community. I needed to know you'd be doing something that mattered to you when I could no longer remember what mattered to me. He reached for my hand. Promise me something. Anything. When the time comes, and it will, stroke or Alzheimer's or simply old age, remember that a legacy isn't built in boardrooms. It's built in moments of choice. When you choose courage over convenience, purpose over profit. I promise, I said, my voice thick. 1 year to the day after I walked out of Thornwick and Chen, I stood before a packed courtroom, representing a group of seniors fighting eviction from their longtime homes to make way for luxury condominiums. The developer was represented by none other than Marcus Chen himself. As I presented our case, I caught sight of my father sitting in the back row, leaning on his cane but sitting tall, watching with unmistakable pride. Beside him sat Judith Richardson, who had become not just our benefactor but a fierce advocate for our work. Marcus avoided my gaze throughout the proceedings, his focus entirely on his expensive leather portfolio and his team of 4 associates. When the judge ruled in our client's favor, granting an injunction that would protect their homes while the full case proceeded, the courtroom erupted in applause. My father's voice somehow carried above the rest. That's my son. As the courtroom cleared, Marcus finally approached me. Interesting career move, Daniel, he said, his tone carefully neutral. I wouldn't have predicted this. Neither would I, once upon a time. He glanced toward my father, who was chatting animatedly with Mrs. Richardson. I hear he's doing well. The treatment worked. It helped, I acknowledged. He has good days and bad. Marcus nodded, seeming genuinely pleased. Then his gaze sharpened. Judith Richardson has taken quite an interest in your little operation. She believes in equal access to justice. As do we all, he replied smoothly. In fact, Thornwick and Chen has been considering expanding our pro bono program. Perhaps there's room for collaboration. I studied the man who had once held such power over my professional life. Are you offering a partnership, Marcus? An alliance. Your expertise, our resources. Think about it. He handed me his card, as if I didn't still have his number memorized. I will, I said, though we both knew what my answer would be. My father joined me as Marcus departed, watching him weave through the crowd. What did he want? To offer a deal he knows I'll refuse, so he can tell himself he tried. Dad nodded approvingly. You've learned well. He gazed around the emptying courtroom. You know, I sat in courtrooms like this for 40 years, believing I was serving justice from the bench. But watching you today, he squeezed my shoulder. This is justice too. Perhaps the kind that matters most. Outside the courthouse, our clients gathered around us, elderly men and women whose relief was palpable. Mrs. Diaz, their unofficial spokesperson at 87, clasped my hands in hers. My husband and I worked our whole lives for that little apartment, she said, eyes bright with tears. We raised our children there, celebrated 50 anniversaries there. How do you thank someone for saving your home? You don't need to thank me, I told her. This is exactly why we exist. That night, as my father and I sat on his porch watching fireflies rise from the lawn, I realized something profound. In walking away from what I thought was success, I had stumbled into something far more valuable: purpose. My father seemed to read my thoughts. When I was diagnosed, he said, I was terrified of losing everything that made me who I am. My memories, my independence, my sense of purpose. He looked at me, his eyes clear and present. But I've realized that the most important parts of us live on in what we create, in who we help, in the choices we make when everything is on the line. I thought about the clinic, about Mrs. Diaz and her neighbors, about the dozens of clients waiting for help, about Rachel and Miguel and Diana, who had chosen the same path, about how walking away from Thornwick and Chen had felt like an ending but had actually been a beginning. The price of legacy, my father continued, isn't measured in billable hours or corner offices. It's measured in the lives we touch, the wrongs we right, the courage we show when it would be easier to look away. A year ago, I had stood in Marcus Chen's office, believing I was sacrificing my future. Now I understood. I hadn't sacrificed a future. I had reclaimed it. Thank you, I said simply, for showing me what matters. My father smiled, reached for my hand, and together we watched as more fireflies rose from the gathering darkness, their light small but undeniable against the vast night. I was 16 when I discovered my father's true feelings about my future at Nakamura Technologies. She's brilliant with code, Hideo, my mother said, her voice drifting up from the study. Olivia's teacher says she's never seen anyone her age understand neural networks so intuitively. My father's response was immediate and dismissive. It doesn't matter. The company goes to Daniel. The Nakamura name stays with the sun. I stood frozen in the hallway, my laptop clutched against my chest, the AI project I'd been eager to show him suddenly feeling childish and irrelevant. Daniel, my brother, 3 years older, charming and utterly disinterested in the technology that had been my obsession since I was 8. The boy who'd barely passed his computer science classes but wore the right face, the right name, the right gender to inherit a tech empire. But Olivia is, my mother began. It's tradition, my father interrupted. Women don't run tech companies. Not in Japan, not here. She'd be eaten alive. I slipped away before they could discover me, retreating to my bedroom where lines of code blurred through my tears. That night, I made a promise to myself. If I couldn't inherit Nakamura Technologies, I would build something even greater. And I would do it on my own terms. 13 years later, I stood in my brother's office, our father's old office, watching Daniel sign the termination papers with the same Mont Blanc pen our father had used to sign his Harvard tuition checks. Nothing personal, Liv, Daniel said, sliding the documents across his immaculate desk. But your department's performance metrics don't justify its existence anymore. I kept my expression neutral, though inside I was cataloging every sacrifice that had led to this moment. The MIT PhD in artificial intelligence, completed in record time. The 7 patents I developed for Nakamura Technologies. The AI-driven security system that had saved the company $30 million last year alone. None of it mattered. I had the wrong name on my birth certificate. The board thinks we should focus on hardware, not your pet AI projects, Daniel continued, already turning his attention to his phone. Maybe start a cute little consulting business, something less technical. I signed the papers without comment, remembering the day 3 years ago when our father died, and the board, composed largely of his golf partners and college friends, unanimously voted Daniel as CEO, despite my detailed 5-year strategic plan for the company's future. Clear out your office by end of day, Daniel added, not bothering to look up from his screen. And Olivia? The tech world is brutal. This is for the best, really. I walked out with my head high, past employees who averted their eyes, past the AI labs where my team worked on innovations Daniel couldn't begin to comprehend. In my office, mine for the next few hours, I methodically packed 8 years of work. Research papers, awards from tech conferences, the framed photo of me with Dr. Hinton at the Toronto AI Summit. At the bottom of my desk drawer, I found a thumb drive labeled Prometheus that made me smile for the first time that day. Daniel had always been so focused on the public-facing AI applications we developed. The virtual assistants, the security protocols, the consumer products, that he completely overlooked the true potential of my research. A shadow fell across my doorway. Elena Chen, my brilliant lead researcher, stood there, her expression a mixture of anger and resolve. So it's true, she said quietly. The board actually approved this. I nodded, sliding the thumb drive into my pocket. Unanimously. What will you do? Remember the conversation we had last month? About starting our own AI research company? Her eyes widened slightly. The one where you mentioned having your trust fund converted to venture capital. I pulled up an email draft I prepared weeks ago when the whispers about department restructuring first reached me. How would you like to be Chief Research Officer at Athena Intelligence? Fully funded, ready to start operations immediately. Alina stared at the business plan attached to the email, comprehension dawning on her face. You've been planning this. For years, I admitted. Why fight for a seat at their table when I can build my own? Over the next 3 hours, more of my team filtered through my office. Raj from data analytics passed over for promotion in favor of Daniel's fraternity brother. Minji from neural engineering, whose groundbreaking research Daniel had dismissed as too theoretical. One by one, they accepted positions at Athena Intelligence. By the time security arrived to escort me out, carrying my box of personal items, my new company had a core team of 12. The best minds from Nakamura's AI division. Daniel called from the executive lobby as I waited for the car I'd ordered. Don't take it personally, Liv. Some people just aren't cut out for the tech industry. I smiled, knowing it would infuriate him. Goodbye, Daniel. Give my regards to the board while they still answer your calls. The confusion on his face was worth every moment of humiliation I'd endured. That night, I sat in my apartment, surrounded by whiteboards covered in algorithms and business strategies. My phone buzzed. Abigail Wong, CTO of Vertigo Systems, confirming our Monday meeting. I looked at the old family photo on my desk. Father standing proudly next to Daniel, his hand on his son's shoulder, while I stood slightly apart, always at the periphery of the frame. Women don't run tech companies, my father had said. He was right about one thing. I wouldn't be running just any tech company. I'd be creating the future he couldn't imagine. Monday morning arrived with a series of increasingly panicked texts from Daniel, which I ignored in favor of preparing for my meeting with Vertigo Systems. The conference room I'd rented for the occasion, Athena Intelligence's offices were still being renovated, felt appropriately imposing with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking San Francisco Bay. This is remarkable, Abigail said, studying the neural architecture diagrams I presented. A truly adaptive AI security system that evolves alongside potential threats rather than merely responding to them. The same system I proposed to Nakamura's board last quarter, I noted. They dismissed it as too experimental and fiscally irresponsible. Their loss, our gain, Abigail replied, signing the partnership agreement with a flourish. Vertigo Systems is proud to be Athena Intelligence's first enterprise client. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen to see Daniel's name, but returned the device to my pocket. I had 3 more meetings scheduled that day with companies eager to implement adaptive AI security solutions. By Wednesday, we'd secured partnerships with 4 major tech firms. Thursday, we announced our first round of funding, $50 million led by Takeda Ventures, a Japanese investment firm known for backing innovative AI startups. Friday morning, Nakamura Technologies stock dropped 12% after analysts questioned the company's competitive edge in the AI security market. Daniels called 6 times today, Elena reported, handing me a coffee as we reviewed designs for our new research facility. Apparently, Vertigo Systems just canceled their contract with Nakamura. Did they? How unfortunate. He left a message saying their legal department is exploring options regarding your non-compete clause. I smiled. They can explore all they want. I never signed one. It was true. In his arrogance, Daniel had never considered that his academically minded sister might pose a competitive threat. The oversight would cost him dearly. The following weeks unfolded with precise, calculated efficiency. Every client Nakamura approached for AI security solutions, we offered a more advanced alternative. Every researcher they attempted to recruit, we outbid them. Every press release they issued about future innovations, we countered with actual deployable technology. We weren't just competing with Nakamura, we were systematically dismantling their relevance in the AI sector. Then came the call I'd been anticipating. Olivia, my mother's voice was strained. We need to talk. I leaned back in my chair, gazing out at the view from Athena's new headquarters. About what, Mom? Nakamura Technologies or Athena Intelligence, because only one of them has a future in artificial intelligence. A pause. Your father, he never meant to dismiss every idea I ever had. To hand the company to Daniel simply because he was a man. To let him run our family legacy into the ground while ignoring every warning sign. More silence, then softly. The board meeting is tomorrow. Daniel, he's going to lose his position. The shareholders are furious about the Vertigo contract and the stock decline. I almost laughed. Sounds like an executive problem. Nothing to do with me. Please, Olivia, he's your brother. Funny, he wasn't my brother when he was firing me and mocking my research. I ended the call, feeling no regret, only a calm certainty about my next move. Tomorrow's board meeting wouldn't just mark my victory, it would determine whether I settled for winning or claimed total dominance in the AI security sector. I picked up my phone. Abigail, remember that integration framework we discussed? Move up the announcement to 9 a.m. tomorrow, and make sure to mention the exclusivity clause. The next morning, I watched Nakamura's emergency board meeting via video link, a simple arrangement when you've designed most of a company's security architecture. Daniel looked terrible, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled, dark circles under his eyes as he tried to explain Nakamura's 35% drop in value over the past month. We're exploring alternative AI security partnerships, he stammered, reaching out to startups with promising technologies. There are no alternative partnerships, interrupted Yoshiko Takeda, who had recently acquired a significant stake in Nakamura. Athena Intelligence has exclusive contracts with every major player in the market. They just announced a $200 million integration framework that makes their technology the industry standard. Daniel tugged at his collar. Perhaps we could reach out to Athena, try to negotiate. The boardroom door opened. Now you want to negotiate? Every head turned as I stepped inside, my Athena Intelligence ID badge gleaming against my charcoal suit. Olivia, my mother half rose from her chair. What are you doing here? I smiled, representing the only company in this room with a viable future in artificial intelligence. Daniel's face darkened. You planned this. You deliberately sabotaged Nakamura? No, Daniel, I interrupted calmly. I built something better, something Nakamura could have owned if you hadn't been so convinced that my research was worthless and women don't belong in tech leadership. I laid out my offer. Athena would acquire Nakamura Technologies. We would preserve the Nakamura name on specific hardware lines, retain most employees, and ensure the company's legacy continued, just not under Daniel's leadership. All in favor? Yoshiko Takeda asked, her expression inscrutable. The vote was nearly unanimous. Even my mother, looking resigned and somehow relieved, raised her hand. Daniel lurched to his feet. This isn't right. Mom, tell them. It's over, Daniel, she said quietly. We should have listened to Olivia years ago. I gathered my materials, preparing to leave, but paused at the door. Oh, and Daniel, don't bother cleaning out your office. I had it cleared this morning. Try not to feel too bad. Some people just aren't cut out for the tech industry. His own words thrown back at him. The perfect conclusion to a plan years in the making. That evening, I sat in my office at Athena headquarters, contemplating the acquisition documents. Nakamura Technologies, the company my grandfather had founded, the empire my father had expanded, the legacy that should have been mine from the beginning, was now under my control. Elena appeared in the doorway. Your mother is here. She looked older than I remembered, smaller somehow. Her usual perfect composure was fractured, revealing the weight of the day's events. The company your grandfather built is in good hands, she said, settling into the chair opposite my desk. No thanks to our short-sightedness. You mean father's short-sightedness, I corrected, and Daniel's arrogance. She shook her head. I share the blame. I should have fought harder for you, Olivia. I saw your potential. I knew you were the future of Nakamura, but I deferred to tradition. I studied her, searching for insincerity but finding only regret. Well, I said finally, at least now you know better. She nodded, then hesitated. That's actually why I came. There's someone I'd like you to meet. My assistant showed it a young woman, barely 20, I guessed, clutching a tablet to her chest, her eyes wide with barely contained excitement. Olivia, this is Sophia Murakami, my mother said. A quantum computing prodigy from Caltech. Her algorithms for quantum neural networks are, well, I think you should see for yourself. I raised an eyebrow. And why are you bringing her to me? My mother actually looked embarrassed. Because when I saw her work, I remembered all of your research that we dismissed. I didn't want to make the same mistake twice. Sophia nervously offered her tablet. Dr. Nakamura said you might be interested in my approach to quantum entanglement for secure AI communications. I accepted the device, scanning through her work with growing interest. These are impressive models. But tell me about yourself first, not your degrees or accolades. Tell me your vision for quantum AI. Her eyes lit up as she launched into an explanation, her initial nervousness giving way to passionate expertise. I caught my mother watching us, something like pride mingled with regret on her face. Later that evening, after offering Sophia a research position at Athena, I found a package on my desk with a note from my mother. Inside was my father's Mont Blanc pen, the same one Daniel had used to sign my termination papers. Asterisk, this belongs with the true future of our family's legacy, asterisk. I set the pen aside and returned to reviewing Sophia's quantum algorithms, a smile playing at my lips. There was still work to do. 3 months later, Daniel arrived at my office, unannounced. Gone was the arrogant CEO swagger. In its place was something I'd never seen in him before: humility. You didn't dismantle the hardware division, he said without preamble. You could have fired everyone, sold off the assets, absorbed the patents. But you didn't. I gestured for him to sit. That would have been inefficient. Nakamura makes excellent hardware. The problem was never the products, it was the leadership. He winced but didn't argue. I've been consulting with a startup in Boston. Medical devices, nothing glamorous, but I'm learning. Actually learning, not just pretending to know everything. But for you, he fidgeted with his watch, not the Rolex he used to wear, I noticed, but something simpler. I've been following Athena's expansion. The quantum security protocols you're developing with that Murakami girl. It's revolutionary. Sophia, I corrected. Her name is Sophia Murakami, and she's not a girl. She's the future of quantum AI architecture. Right? Sorry. He took a deep breath. I was wrong, Olivia. About you, about the company, about everything. You built something incredible, and you beat me fair and square. I leaned back, studying my brother. The past 30 months had changed him, humbled him in ways I hadn't thought possible. Why are you here, Daniel? He reached into his messenger bag and pulled out a folder. I've been developing a proposal for AI-enhanced medical diagnostics. It's nothing compared to what you're doing, but I thought maybe you'd look at it. Tell me if I'm on the right track. I accepted the folder, surprised by the gesture. You want my opinion? You who once told me my ideas were unnecessarily complex and unmarketable. He had the grace to look ashamed. I want to learn from the best. That's you, Liv. It always was. I examined his proposal, genuinely impressed by the thought he put into it. The Daniel I knew would never have done this level of research, this careful consideration of practical applications. It's not bad, I admitted. The framework needs refinement, but the core concept is solid. Relief washed over his face. Really, really, I tapped the folder thoughtfully. How would you feel about developing this under Athena's medical division? Not as an executive, as a project lead, starting from the ground up, earning your position like everyone else. His eyes widened. You'd give me a chance. After everything? Not give, Daniel. Offer. You'd have to work harder than you've ever worked. Take direction from people you used to consider beneath you, and prove your value every single day. A slow smile spread across his face. Not the confident smirk I was accustomed to, but something genuine. When do I start? 1 year later, Athena Intelligence had transformed the landscape of artificial intelligence. Our quantum security protocols had become the industry standard. Sophia's research team was breaking new ground in quantum neural networks. And the Nakamura hardware division, now fully integrated with our AI systems, was producing technology that outperformed every competitor. Daniel, to everyone's surprise including my own, had thrown himself into his medical AI project with unprecedented dedication. He worked alongside researchers he would once have ignored, learned from engineers he would have dismissed, and gradually earned the respect of his team. Your profile in Tech Innovator just hit the stands, Elena announced, dropping a magazine on my desk. The cover showed me standing in our quantum research lab, Sophia beside me, under the headline, The Intelligence Revolution. How Olivia Nakamura redefined AI while shattering Silicon Valley's glass ceiling. Elena grinned. The sidebar about our mentorship program is getting lots of attention online. The Athena Accelerator, my passion project. It provided funding, mentorship, and resources to young women and non-binary individuals in STEM fields, particularly those focused on artificial intelligence. My father would have called it a distraction from our core business. In reality, it had become our greatest talent pipeline. Dr. Nakamura, my assistant, called over the intercom. Your mother is here. She entered carrying a familiar wooden box. The one that had sat on my father's desk for as long as I could remember. The one that had held his most important documents, including the succession plans that had excluded me. I found these while going through your father's personal storage, she said, placing the box on my desk. Letters he wrote but never sent. This one has your name on it. I opened the envelope, recognizing my father's precise handwriting. Asterisk Olivia, asterisk. Asterisk, by the time you read this, I will likely be gone. Perhaps that's for the best, as I lack the courage to admit my failures to you directly, asterisk. Asterisk, I was wrong. About you, about the company's future, about what leadership truly means. I watched you develop innovations I couldn't begin to comprehend, yet I clung to outdated traditions that said a daughter couldn't lead asterisk. Asterisk, my own father would be ashamed of me. He didn't build Nakamura for status or tradition. He built it to create technology that changed lives. You understand this in ways Daniel never will asterisk. Asterisk, I've made arrangements with my attorneys. The succession plan has been modified. It may cause turmoil, but the company deserves the leader it needs, not the one tradition dictates asterisk. Asterisk, I hope someday you can forgive my blindness asterisk. Asterisk with pride and regret. Asterisk. Asterisk father asterisk. I stared at the letter, dated just 2 weeks before his unexpected death. The modifications he mentioned had never materialized. His attorneys had never executed whatever changes he planned. He was going to change his will, my mother confirmed quietly, to make you CEO. He died before the papers were finalized. I carefully folded the letter, emotions I couldn't name washing through me. It doesn't matter now. No, she agreed. You've built something far greater than he could have imagined. Later that afternoon, I visited Daniel in the medical research lab. He was deep in conversation with his team, reviewing neural imaging algorithms with an intensity I once would have thought impossible for him. The board approved your project's expansion, I told him after his team dispersed. The clinical trials can begin next quarter. His face lit up. Thank you, Olivia. You won't regret it. I know. I handed him a copy of the Tech Innovator article. They mentioned your medical ad platform as one of our most promising innovations. He skimmed the article, then looked up with genuine admiration. You did it, Liv. Everything father said you couldn't do. You did it anyway. We did it, I corrected. The company is stronger with both of us contributing in the right ways. Daniel shook his head ruefully. You know what I realized recently? When father said women don't belong in tech leadership, he wasn't just wrong about you, he was wrong about leadership itself. It's not about gender or tradition. It's about vision. I finished. About building something that matters. About recognizing talent wherever you find it. He nodded. Thanks for teaching me that, even if your method was dramatic. I smiled, thinking of the day I'd taken control of our family's company. Some lessons leave scars, Daniel, but if they heal properly, they make you stronger. In my office, alongside my degrees and patents, hangs my termination letter from Nakamura Technologies, a reminder of where I started. But surrounding it are photographs that represent something far more significant. Sofia presenting her quantum research at CERN. Elena accepting the Turing Award. Daniel with his medical AI team celebrating their first successful diagnostic protocol. And a new family photo taken at Athena's headquarters, where tradition has been replaced by innovation, where legacy is measured not by names but by impact, and where the future is being built by people once told they didn't belong. My father was wrong. Women do run tech companies, and sometimes they transform entire industries in the process. I never wanted to be a corporate lawyer. That might sound ungrateful considering the 6-figure salary, corner office, and partner track position at one of Boston's most prestigious firms. But for me, Blackwell and Pierce was a gilded prison, each meticulously drafted contract another bar in the cage that kept me from my true calling. My name is Marcus Chen, and for the past 8 years, I've been living a double life. To my family, I'm the dutiful son who followed my father's footsteps into corporate law. To the technology world, I'm Phoenix, creator of Harmony, the artificial intelligence music composition software revolutionizing the entertainment industry and valued at $1.2 billion. Neither world knows about the other. The irony of my situation struck me hardest this morning as I stood in the gleaming lobby of Blackwell and Pierce, watching the installation of a new sound system. The firm was hosting a charity gala that evening, and the keynote speaker was none other than Eliza Winters, CEO of Melodic Ventures, the company that had just acquired Harmony for $600 million. Incredible what these tech companies are willing to pay for algorithms these days, remarked senior partner Richard Blackwell, stopping beside me. This Phoenix character must be laughing all the way to the bank. Probably some college dropout who got lucky. I maintained my carefully neutral expression while my stomach tightened. The technology is quite revolutionary from what I understand. It's changing how film scores and video game soundtracks are composed. Richard scoffed. Well, it certainly made Winters rich, and tonight, hopefully generous. He slapped my shoulder. The Wilson merger documents need final review by 4. Don't disappoint me. As he walked away, I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Eliza. A text message flashed across the screen. Asterisk need to discuss announcement tonight. Investors pushing for Phoenix to make an appearance asterisk. I ducked into an empty conference room, my heart pounding. In 8 years, I had never appeared publicly as Phoenix. The acquisition agreement specifically accommodated my anonymity. Eliza was one of only 3 people who knew my identity. This wasn't part of our deal, I said when she answered my call. Circumstances change, she replied, her voice tense. The board is concerned about future innovations. They want assurance that the creative genius behind Harmony isn't just taking the money and disappearing. They're threatening to hold back the final payment unless Phoenix makes a public commitment to continued development. That's $200 million, I said quietly. Yes, it is. And before you remind me of our contract, their lawyers have identified a potential loophole. We can fight it, but it would be cleaner if you just made an appearance. At tonight's gala, it would be perfect timing. All the major tech media will be there covering the acquisition announcement. Phoenix makes a surprise appearance, shares a vision for the future, everyone wins. Everyone except me, I muttered, looking through the glass walls at my colleagues hurrying through their 60-hour work weeks. I can't just suddenly reveal I've been living a double life. My firm, my family. Your choice, Marcus, Eliza said. But the final transfer happens tomorrow, and the board meets in 3 hours. I need your decision. After she hung up, I sat in a silent conference room, feeling the walls of my carefully constructed worlds beginning to crumble. My story really begins 12 years ago, when I was a promising computer science major at MIT with a minor in music composition. I had developed an algorithm that could analyze thousands of musical scores and then generate original compositions in any style: classical, jazz, hip-hop, film scores. The program didn't just mimic, it created with an emotional intelligence that stunned my professors. This could revolutionize entertainment, Marcus, my advisor had said. You could build something extraordinary. The same week I received acquisition offers from 3 major tech companies, my father had a heart attack. As I sat beside his hospital bed, the machines tracking his heartbeat with steady beeps, he gripped my hand. I've worked my whole life to give you opportunities, he said, his voice weak. The Blackwell position is everything we've worked for. Promise me you won't throw it away on these computer games. My father had immigrated to America with nothing, worked himself through law school at night, and sacrificed everything to give me the opportunities he never had. How could I tell him that the computer games could make me a millionaire many times over? How could I disappoint the man who had just nearly died, whose only dream was to see his son follow in his footsteps? I promised. The next week, I turned down the tech offers and accepted a position at my father's firm. But I couldn't abandon my creation entirely. Late at night, in a small apartment I rented under an assumed name, I continued developing my algorithm. I created the Phoenix identity, secured patents through anonymous holdings, and connected with Eliza Winters, a rising venture capitalist who understood both the technology and my need for secrecy. You can have both worlds, she promised. We'll build this together, and no one ever needs to know who Phoenix really is. For 8 years, the arrangement worked. I drafted contracts by day and coded by night, catching sleep in 3-hour increments and fueling myself with espresso and determination. Harmony grew from a promising prototype to an industry-changing platform. Major film studios used it to compose background scores. Video game companies licensed it to create dynamic soundtracks that adapted to players' actions. Streaming services utilized it to generate personalized playlists. And all the while, I maintained my trajectory at Blackwell and Pierce, making junior partner at 32, earning my father's pride and locking myself further into a life I had never wanted. The acquisition offer from Melodic Ventures had seemed like the perfect exit strategy. The money would allow me to eventually leave law without raising suspicions. I could simply announce a career change, perhaps even join Melodic as a legal consultant while actually working on Harmony's next iteration. But now, Eliza's demand threatened everything. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. Asterisk, looking forward to seeing you at the gala tonight. Proud of you, send asterisk. I closed my eyes. the familiar weight of expectations pressing down on me. Then I made a decision and called Eliza back. "I'll do it," I said, "but on my terms." The Blackwell and Pierce Charity Gala transformed the firm's normally austere lobby into an elegant reception hall. String lights draped from the vaulted ceiling, a jazz quartet played softly in the corner, and Boston's elite circulated with champagne flutes in hand, checkbooks at the ready. My father found me as I entered, resplendent in his tuxedo, his silver hair perfectly groomed. At 65, he still commanded attention in any room. "Marcus," he beamed, embracing me. "Richard tells me you finished the Wilson merger documentation single-handedly. Impressive work." "Thanks, Dad," I said, accepting a champagne flute from a passing server. "Looks like a good turnout for the Children's Hospital." "Indeed, and your Ms. Winters is quite the draw. Everyone wants a piece of the tech boom these days." He gestured toward Eliza, who was holding court near the stage, elegant in a midnight blue gown. She caught my eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod. My heart rate accelerated. "The program begins in 20 minutes, my father continued. "I've saved seats in the front row." "Actually, Dad, I need to handle something for Richard first. I'll join you shortly." I slipped away before he could ask questions, making my way to the small preparation room behind the stage where Eliza waited. "Are you ready?" she asked, studying my face. "No," I admitted, "but I don't see another option." She handed me a small flash drive. "Your presentation is loaded. The announcement of the acquisition comes first. Then I'll introduce the mysterious Phoenix and you'll take it from there." She squeezed my arm. "For what it's worth, I think this is the right move. You can't live a divided life forever, Marcus." At precisely 8 o'clock, Richard Blackwell welcomed the guests and introduced Eliza. I stood in the shadows of the stage, my pulse pounding in my ears as she announced Melodic Ventures' acquisition of Harmony. "This technology is revolutionary," she told the crowd. "It doesn't replace human creativity, it enhances it, democratizes it, and opens new possibilities for artistic expression." The audience applauded politely, most of them more interested in their nonprofit tax deductions than music software innovation. My father sat in the front row, his expression one of polite interest. "And now," Eliza continued, "I have a special surprise. For the first time ever, the creator of Harmony has agreed to make a public appearance. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to introduce you to Phoenix." The room buzzed with excitement as I stepped onto the stage. I saw confusion ripple through the crowd as they recognized me, just Marcus Chen, corporate lawyer, not some mysterious tech genius. "Good evening," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "My name is Marcus Chen. Some of you know me as an attorney at Blackwell and Pierce, but for the past 8 years, I've also been Phoenix, the creator of Harmony." Gasps and murmurs swept through the room. I didn't dare look at my father. I developed the first version of Harmony as a student at MIT, combining my computer science knowledge with my passion for music composition. While I pursued a legal career to fulfill family expectations, I never abandoned my true calling. I clicked through to the demonstration portion of my presentation, and the room filled with the sweeping orchestral music generated by my algorithm. The score I had created specifically for this moment. It built from a simple piano melody to a full symphonic arrangement, telling through music the story I was struggling to tell with words. Harmony isn't just software, I continued as the music played. It's the realization that technology and art aren't separate worlds. They can enhance each other, elevate each other, much like our logical and creative selves don't need to be in conflict. As the music reached its crescendo, I finally found the courage to look at my father. His expression was unreadable, his posture rigid. Beside him, Richard Blackwell looked thunderstruck. With Melodic Ventures resources, we'll expand Harmony's capabilities, making sophisticated music composition accessible to filmmakers, game developers, and artists who lack formal musical training. We'll establish educational initiatives to bring music technology to underserved schools. And we'll continue pushing the boundaries of what AI and human creativity can accomplish together. I concluded my presentation to stunned silence, followed by an eruption of applause. Journalists rushed forward with questions. Tech investors who had ignored the boring charity event suddenly crowded the stage. Through it all, I watched my father slowly stand and walk toward the exit. Eliza appeared at my side, beaming. "They love you. The board is ecstatic. The final payment is secure." But I hardly heard her. "Excuse me," I said, slipping from the stage and following my father's path. I found him in the partners' lounge, standing by the window that overlooked the Boston skyline. He didn't turn when I entered. "Dad," I began, my voice catching. "I can explain." 8 years, he said quietly. 8 years of deception. "I didn't want to disappoint you," I said, moving to stand beside him. "After your heart attack, when you talked about how important it was that I join the firm." "So you lived a lie?" He turned to face me, and I was surprised to see not just anger in his eyes, but hurt. "You thought that's what I wanted, isn't it? You always said being a lawyer was the pinnacle of success. You worked your entire life so I could have this opportunity." He shook his head slowly. "I worked my entire life so you could have choices, Marcus. Choices I never had." He gestured toward the door, where we could still hear the excited buzz from the lobby. "This creation of yours. This is extraordinary. Why would you ever think I wouldn't be proud of that?" "Because it wasn't law," I said simply. "It wasn't following in your footsteps." My father sighed heavily, suddenly looking every one of his 65 years. "When your mother and I came to this country, we had nothing. I became a lawyer because it was stable, respected. It provided for our family." He placed his hands on my shoulders. "But I wanted you to pursue excellence, Marcus, not necessarily in law, just in whatever path you chose." "I didn't choose," I admitted. "I tried to do both." "At what cost? When was the last time you slept more than 4 hours? When did you last take a vacation, see friends, have a life outside work?" I had no answer. The exhaustion of 8 years of double lives suddenly seemed to catch up with me all at once. "That music," my father continued, "the piece you played tonight, it was beautiful. Was that really created by your algorithm?" "With my guidance," I said. "I designed it to express what words couldn't." He nodded thoughtfully. "It succeeded. I heard pride in that music, determination, but also longing." He squeezed my shoulder. "I never meant to be the reason for that longing, son." Before I could respond, the door opened and Richard Blackwell entered, his face flushed with what could have been either anger or excitement. "Marcus," he said, his voice carefully controlled, "there are about 20 technology journalists in our lobby demanding interviews with the lawyer-turned-tech billionaire. Care to explain what's happening to my charity gala?" My father straightened, his protective instincts visibly kicking in. "Richard." "It's okay, Dad," I interrupted gently. Then to Richard, "I apologize for the disruption. The timing wasn't my choice, but the revelation was inevitable." "Revelation," Richard repeated. "That while collecting a salary from this firm, you've been operating a, what exactly?" "A software company." "I've never neglected my responsibilities here," I said. "My billable hours are among the highest in the firm." "The Wilson merger is irrelevant," Richard cut in. "This is about loyalty, Marcus, about transparency. The firm has invested considerably in your development, and all the while, you've been pursuing other interests. Interests that have apparently resulted in a technology valued at over $1 billion. My father interjected, surprising me with his defensive tone. "Interests that demonstrate extraordinary talent and vision." Richard's expression shifted as the financial implications seemed to register. "Well, yes, the achievement is certainly impressive. Perhaps we should discuss how this might benefit the firm." Our technology practice called. "No," I said, the word emerging more forcefully than I'd intended. "I'm sorry, Richard, but I've made my decision. Effective immediately, I'm resigning from Blackwell and Pierce." The weight that had pressed on me for 8 years seemed to lift with those words. Richard stared at me in disbelief. "This is rash, Marcus. Let's discuss this tomorrow." "When?" "It's not rash," I countered. "It's 8 years overdue." I turned to my father, expecting disappointment, but found him watching me with something that looked surprisingly like pride. "I need to get back to the event," I said. "Eliza will be wondering where I am." I extended my hand to Richard. "Thank you for the opportunities you've provided. I'll ensure a smooth transition for my clients." Stunned, he shook my hand automatically. As I turned to leave, my father fell into step beside me. "You don't have to leave with me, Dad," I said quietly. "These are your colleagues, your friends." He smiled, the same smile I remembered from my childhood when I'd mastered a difficult piano piece or solved a complex math problem. "I'm exactly where I should be, son, beside you." The aftermath was both simpler and more complicated than I had anticipated. The tech media exploded with the story of the secret billionaire lawyer, turning me into an overnight sensation. Melodic Ventures stock rose 15% following the revelation, and the final acquisition payment processed without issue. My departure from Blackwell and Pierce was accelerated by mutual agreement. Richard, ever the pragmatist, pivoted quickly to leveraging his connection to the Phoenix phenomenon for client development. Some of my colleagues were resentful, others fascinated, but none were truly surprised. The exhaustion I'd been carrying had been visible to anyone paying attention. 1 month after the gala, I stood in the newly renovated offices of the Phoenix Foundation, an organization I'd established to bring music technology education to underserved communities. The space hummed with activity as programmers, musicians, and educators collaborated on curriculum development. The Boston Symphony Orchestra accepted our proposal, announced Claire, my program director. They'll partner with us for the summer youth program. And MIT wants to establish a joint research initiative, added David, my technical lead. They're offering dedicated lab space and graduate student support. I smiled, watching them return to their work with enthusiasm. For the first time in years, I felt fully present, fully engaged in a single purpose rather than stretched between worlds. My father visited that afternoon, touring the foundation with genuine interest, asking questions about the technology and the educational philosophy. At 65, he had finally reduced his own work hours and was exploring long-abandoned hobbies. "I've been thinking about what you said," he told me as we stood by the window overlooking the Charles River. "About choices and expectations. Dad, you don't need to." He held up a hand. "Let me finish. Your mother's father was a concert pianist in Shanghai before the Cultural Revolution. Did you know that?" I shook my head, surprised. "He was forced to abandon music to work in factories. Your mother grew up without music in her home because it wasn't practical, wasn't safe." He turned to face me fully. "When we came to America, we wanted security for you above all else. Perhaps in pursuing that security, we ignored the creative legacy that was also your birthright." Through the glass wall of my office, we could see a group of high school students arriving for a workshop, their faces bright with excitement as they were introduced to harmony. "You found a way to honor both," my father said, watching them. "The practical drive that built this business and the creative spirit that inspired it." He laid a hand on my shoulder. "I spent years thinking I knew what success looked like for you. I was wrong." That evening, after everyone had left, I sat alone in my office with a prototype of Harmony's next iteration. I loaded a piece of music my algorithm had created that morning, a complex, layered composition that intertwined traditional Chinese melodies with contemporary orchestration. As the music filled the room, I thought about the paths not taken, the years spent divided, and the unexpected journey that had brought me here. I had spent so long trying to live two separate lives, never realizing that my greatest work would come from finally bringing them together. My phone buzzed with a text from Eliza. Board meeting tomorrow at 10. Bringing that venture capital group interested in educational applications. Wear something impressive. I smiled and texted back. How about just something authentic? Then I turned back to my computer, added a new layer to the composition, and for the first time in years, signed the digital file with my real name. Not Phoenix, not Marcus Chen, attorney at law, just Marcus, creating exactly what I was meant to create, exactly as I was meant to create it. In the soft glow of my office, with Boston's lights twinkling beyond the windows and my music, flowing around me, I finally understood. Sometimes the most complex harmonies emerge not when we separate our different selves, but when we allow them to play together. People like us don't change the world, my grandmother said as she handed me the last $200 from her savings account. We just survive in it. I was 24, standing in the cramped kitchen of her South Boston apartment where I'd grown up. The ancient refrigerator hummed in the background, struggling like everything else in this neighborhood. My name is Eliza Chen, and that day, the day my acceptance letter to MIT's graduate program arrived, was supposed to be the proudest moment of my life. Instead, it became the day I lost my last living relative. "You're throwing away everything we've built," Uncle Philip shouted, his face flushed with anger. "The family business needs you now, not years from now after you've wasted time on academic fantasies." The family business was Chen's auto repair, the shop my immigrant grandparents had opened 40 years ago. My uncle had taken over after my grandfather died, and everyone assumed I would eventually join him. It was expected, predetermined, my duty. What they didn't understand was that I had inherited more than just my grandfather's name. I'd inherited his original dream. Before America ground him down with practical realities, before a small auto shop became his legacy instead of the engineering innovations he'd once imagined, my grandfather had been an inventor. Late at night, he'd show me his sketches, engine designs that were decades ahead of their time, energy systems that big companies would eventually develop years later. In another life, he'd whisper, his eyes distant, these could have changed everything. I'd applied to MIT's program in advanced propulsion systems with one goal: to build what my grandfather couldn't, to finish what circumstance had forced him to abandon. This isn't just about school, I tried explaining to my uncle. The research I want to do could revolutionize how engines work, make them cleaner, more efficient. Revolutionize? Uncle Philip scoffed. Your grandfather spent 30 years changing oil and fixing transmissions to put food on our table. That's real life, Eliza, not some fancy research lab. My grandmother, who'd remained silent throughout the argument, finally spoke. Let her go, Philip. Keeping her here won't bring your father back. Uncle Philip stormed out, leaving me alone with my grandmother. She shuffled to the drawer where she kept her emergency money and counted out 10 worn $20 bills. I wanted to give you more, she said apologetically, pressing the money into my palm. But this is all I have. I can't take this, I protested, knowing how little she'd lived on. You must. Her weathered hands closed mine around the bills. Your scholarship covers tuition, but you'll need something to start with. She hugged me, her tiny frame somehow still strong. Just remember, she whispered, people like us have to work twice as hard to get half as far. Don't let anyone tell you what you're worth. That night, I packed everything that mattered into one suitcase: clothes, my grandfather's notebook of designs, and a photo of us standing proudly in front of the auto shop. By morning, I was on a bus to Cambridge with $200, a full scholarship that barely covered tuition, and no idea how I would survive. MIT was everything I dreamed of and everything I feared. The campus buzzed with brilliant minds from privileged backgrounds, people who'd never worried about paying rent or supporting family back home. My cohort in the engineering program included graduates from elite universities, children of successful entrepreneurs, and international students from wealthy families. Then there was me, the scholarship kid from Southie with a community college degree and grease still embedded in her fingernails. During orientation, I met Trevor Wellington IV, yes, the actual fourth in his family with that name. His father's investment firm had funded half the technology startups in Boston. Chen, he mused when we introduced ourselves. Any relation to Chen Technologies? No, I said, simply, not explaining that the only Chen enterprise I was connected to specialized in muffler replacements, not technology ventures. Shame, he replied with casual disappointment. Father's always looking for promising Asian-led startups to diversify the portfolio. I smiled tightly and moved away, adding his casual condescension to the chip already forming on my shoulder. My first semester was brutal. While my classmates debated theoretical problems over expensive dinners, I worked 3 campus jobs just to afford my half of the rent in a dilapidated apartment shared with 4 other students. I served coffee at dawn in the campus cafe, assisted in the engineering lab during afternoons, and spent evenings cleaning offices in the research building. Between shifts, I attended classes running on caffeine and determination. At night, I studied until my eyes burned, falling asleep with my grandfather's notebooks open beside me. The department's annual innovation competition came around in November. The prize, $25,000 and a summer internship at Helios Dynamics, the country's leading clean energy engineering firm. For most of my classmates, it was a prestigious addition to already impressive resumes. For me, it was oxygen. I submitted my design for what I called a regenerative combustion system, essentially an engine that could capture and reuse its own thermal energy, dramatically improving efficiency while reducing emissions. The concept had begun in my grandfather's notebooks, but I'd refined it with everything I was learning, incorporating new materials and computational models he could never have accessed. When the finalists were announced, my name was among them. So was Trevor Wellington's. The night before our presentations, I was pulling a late shift cleaning the engineering building when I overheard voices from Professor Harlow's office. "Wellington's design has commercial applications we can implement immediately," said a voice I recognized as Dean Porter's. "His family connections alone make him the obvious choice." "The competition is supposed to be judged on innovation, not connections," Professor Harlow argued. "The Chen girl's design is revolutionary. Rough around the edges, yes, but with potential we haven't seen in years." "Be realistic, Margaret," the dean countered. "Wellington comes with funding opportunities, family backing, the right pedigree. The Chen girl? Brilliant, perhaps, but without resources or connections, what can she really accomplish? This industry isn't just about good ideas." I stood frozen, mop in hand, as they continued discussing how my background made me a risky investment compared to someone like Trevor, regardless of whose design was better. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk, staring at my grandfather's photo, his words echoing. Ideas without opportunity remain just dreams. The next day, I presented my design to the judges with such fierce clarity and technical precision that even Trevor looked concerned. When questioned about practical implementation, I didn't just have theories, I had detailed manufacturing processes informed by years of hands-on mechanical work that my competitors lacked. "This isn't conceptual," I explained, showing how my design could be retrofitted to existing engines. "I've built simpler versions in my grandfather's shop. This works." A week later, the results were announced. I received second place. Trevor won. The internship, the money, the connections, all went to him. I received a certificate and a $2,000 runner-up prize that barely covered next month's expenses. That evening, Professor Harlow found me in the lab, still working despite the disappointment. "Your design was superior," she said without preamble. "Apparently not superior enough," I replied, not looking up from my calculations. "You know how these things work, Eliza. But don't give up." She placed a business card on my desk. "Catherine Mendoza at Mendoza Tech saw your presentation. She'd like to meet you." I'd heard of Catherine Mendoza, a legendarily tough, self-made engineer who'd built a mid-sized firm focused on specialized propulsion systems. What I didn't know then was that she'd grown up in a neighborhood not unlike mine, fought through the same prejudices, and recognized in my work something familiar. Our meeting was scheduled for the following week, but 3 days before, my grandmother had a stroke. The call came during class. Uncle Philip, frantic, saying I needed to come home immediately. I withdrew from the semester, packed my research, and took the first bus back to Boston. For the next 2 months, I split my time between my grandmother's hospital bed and the auto shop, which was falling apart without Uncle Philip's full attention. "I'm sorry," my grandmother whispered one evening, her speech still slurred from the stroke. "Your grandfather would be so disappointed." Another Chen with big dreams forced back to reality. "Don't say that," I told her, squeezing her hand. "This is temporary." But as bills mounted and her condition stabilized but didn't improve, temporary stretched into 6 months. I missed my meeting with Catherine Mendoza. My scholarship was deferred but not guaranteed if I took too long to return. The auto shop barely generated enough income to cover my grandmother's care and the household expenses. Then came the letter from Helios Dynamics announcing their groundbreaking new engine design that increased efficiency by 22%, remarkably similar to the 30% improvement my design had projected, though with several key elements simplified or removed. The press release featured Trevor Wellington prominently as the lead design engineer. I recognized enough of my work to know what had happened, but with no resources to fight it and no proof beyond my competition submission, I had nothing but cold fury and renewed determination. That night, I sat in my grandfather's old workshop behind the auto shop, surrounded by tools and the ghosts of abandoned dreams. On his workbench, I spread out my designs, his notebooks, and the Helios press release. "They took part of it," I said aloud to his memory, "but they didn't get all of it, and they don't know what I know now." Looking around the shop, at the equipment, the tools, the parts, I saw something I'd missed before. I didn't need MIT's labs to build a prototype. I needed ingenuity, mechanical skill, and the very things I'd been trying to escape. This shop, these tools, this life that had taught me to fix broken things with limited resources. For the next year, I lived a double life. During days, I ran Chen's auto repair, gradually modernizing it, bringing in new customers, and stabilizing our finances. Evenings and weekends, I built my prototype, ordering specialized parts when I could afford them, fabricating others myself, and adapting my design to work with what I had available. I also cultivated a relationship with one particular customer, Rachel Mendez, a paralegal at a law firm specializing in intellectual property. She became fascinated with my project, offering both legal insights and connections that eventually proved invaluable. 15 months after returning home, three things happened in rapid succession. My grandmother passed away peacefully in her sleep. Uncle Philip announced he was selling the auto shop to a developer, and my prototype engine, built in that same shop from parts I'd scrounged, modified, and created, achieved a 34% efficiency improvement over standard engines. At my grandmother's funeral, Uncle Philip pulled me aside. "I'm sorry about the shop," he said gruffly, "but the developer's offer will let me retire early. You should take your share and go back to school." "I'm not going back to school," I told him. "I'm starting a company." He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "With what? Your share isn't even 6 figures." "It's enough," I said with certainty, "especially with what I've built." Through Rachel, I was introduced to Sandra Liu, a venture capitalist known for taking chances on unconventional founders. I brought my prototype, my complete designs, and a business plan for what I called Phoenix Propulsion Systems. "Why Phoenix?" Sandra asked after witnessing my prototype in action. "Because it rose from ashes," I replied simply. "Just like I did." She invested $1.5 million for a 25% stake, significantly less than I was asking for, but enough to secure a small manufacturing space, hire 2 engineers who'd been laid off from larger firms, and file the patents I needed to protect my work. I also sent an email to Catherine Mendoza, apologizing for missing our meeting 2 years earlier and explaining the circumstances. I didn't expect a response, but 3 days later, she was standing in my workshop examining my prototype with critical eyes. "Helios announced something similar last year," she said, giving nothing away in her expression. "They announced a fraction of what I designed." I corrected her. "This is the complete system, with improvements." She tested my prototype herself, measuring outputs, questioning my methodology, challenging every claim. After 3 hours, she looked up and said simply, "I'd like to partner with you." Mendoza Tech became our manufacturing partner, giving Phoenix access to production facilities and distribution channels we couldn't have access for years otherwise. In exchange, Mendoza received exclusive manufacturing rights and a percentage of each unit sold. The first year was brutal. Helios, realizing the threat we posed, launched both legal challenges and a ruthless pricing strategy aimed at crushing us before we could establish ourselves. Trevor Wellington, now a rising executive there, led the charge, publicly dismissing our technology as derivative and unproven. But what Helios didn't understand was that I'd spent my entire life learning to survive with less. Phoenix operated with minimal overhead, focused on specialized markets Helios considered too small, and built relationships with manufacturers looking for competitive advantages. Our breakthrough came in the most unexpected way. A major Japanese motorcycle manufacturer was seeking ways to meet stringent new emission standards without sacrificing power. Our system, more compact and efficient than anything Helios offered, provided the perfect solution. The contract was worth $12 million. More importantly, it validated our technology on a global stage. 3 years after starting Phoenix, we had grown to 68 employees, held 14 patents, and were profitable enough to move into a dedicated facility in the industrial district not far from my grandfather's old shop. Uncle Philip, who had initially dismissed my company nonsense, now proudly wore Phoenix-branded shirts and told everyone his niece was a big-shot engineer. Then came the call from Sandra. "Helios is looking to acquire Phoenix," she said without preamble. "They're offering $120 million. I laughed. "They're offering to buy what they tried to steal." "It's a serious offer, Eliza. That's life-changing money for everyone involved, especially you as the majority shareholder." "I'll think about it," I promised, already knowing my answer. The meeting was scheduled at Helios headquarters in their sleek downtown office tower. I arrived intentionally 10 minutes late, dressed not in the expected formal business attire but in a crisp button-down shirt with a Phoenix logo and dark jeans. the uniform of someone who still worked with their hands when needed. Trevor Wellington was waiting in the conference room, now Executive Vice President of Acquisition Strategy. He'd aged well in the traditional sense, expensive haircut, tailored suit, the confident posture of someone who'd never had his worth questioned. "Eliza," he greeted me with practiced warmth. "Wonderful to see you again. Your company has made quite an impression. Enough of an impression for you to offer $120 million for technology you once called derivative," I noted, taking a seat across from him. His smile tightened slightly. "Market conditions evolve. We recognize the value Phoenix brings to the table." For the next hour, Trevor and his team outlined their vision. Phoenix would be absorbed into Helios, our technology integrated into their product lines, our brand gradually phased out. I would receive a generous compensation package including a 3-year executive position reporting to Trevor. When they finished, the room fell silent. All eyes on me. "Your offer is inadequate," I said simply. Trevor blinked. "Perhaps we could adjust the financial terms." "This isn't about money," I interrupted. "It's about recognition and control. Phoenix stays independent. We'll consider a strategic partnership where Helios licenses our technology at market rates, while we maintain our brand and operational autonomy." "That's not the type of arrangement we're proposing," Trevor replied, his corporate veneer cracking slightly. I gathered my materials and stood. "Then we don't have anything to discuss." "You're making a mistake," Trevor called as I reached the door. "You can't compete with Helios long term. Without our resources, without our connections." I turned back, meeting his gaze directly. "That's where you've always been wrong, Trevor. You think success comes from having resources. I know it comes from being resourceful." 6 months later, Phoenix announced a breakthrough. Our second-generation engine system with efficiency improvements of 42% and emissions reductions that exceeded all projected global standards for the next decade. Our stock, yes, we'd gone public by then, doubled overnight. Helios came back to the table, this time offering partnership terms that acknowledged Phoenix's independent value and my continued leadership. We negotiated a deal that gave both companies strategic advantages while preserving what I'd built. On the day we signed the agreement, I drove to my old neighborhood and parked outside the building that had once housed Chen's Auto Repair. The developer had transformed it into luxury condominiums, erasing all physical evidence of my family's decades of work. From my car, I retrieved a small package wrapped in brown paper. Inside was my grandfather's original notebook of engine designs, now framed alongside a photo of our new Phoenix headquarters and a simple note: "Dreams delayed are not dreams denied." I placed it on the steps of the building, took a photo with my phone, and sent it to Uncle Philip with the message: "Remember when you said people like us don't change the world? Turns out, we just needed the right tools." As I drove away, my phone rang, the special ringtone I'd assigned to my executive assistant. "Ms. Chen," she said when I answered, "Catherine Mendoza is on line 1. She says it's urgent." I smiled, thinking about how far I'd come from that day with $200 in my grandmother's kitchen. "Tell her I'm on my way back to the office," I replied, "and I'm ready for whatever's next." Because the truth I'd learned, the truth I live by now, was that your worth isn't determined by where you start, who believes in you, or what others try to take from you. It's built through what you create, what you overcome, and what you refuse to surrender. Sometimes the greatest revenge against those who underestimated you isn't proving them wrong. It's making their opinion irrelevant. The day I was fired from Nexus Technologies for being too old to innovate, I was 41 years old with 3 advanced degrees and 14 patents to my name. That same afternoon, I emptied my retirement account, sold my Tesla, and made the first entry in what would become the most valuable algorithm in data security history, all because my 28-year-old CEO thought a woman my age belonged in middle management, not leading his R&D division. My name is Meera Patel, and this is how I turned corporate humiliation into a billion-dollar redemption. The direction of our security division needs fresh perspectives, Meera, Adam Reynolds explained, leaning back in his ergonomic chair in that calculated casual posture they teach in executive coaching sessions. His office overlooked San Francisco Bay through floor-to-ceiling windows, a view I'd helped pay for with the data encryption protocols I'd developed over my 12 years with the company. "You've been an incredible asset," he continued, not meeting my eyes. "But we're pivoting toward a more aggressive, cutting-edge approach. We think you'd be better suited to an advisory role. Less pressure, more stability. Translation: we're moving you away from innovation to make room for younger talent who'll work twice the hours for half your salary. I sat perfectly still, absorbing the carefully crafted corporate speak that masked the simple truth. I was being sidelined. The advisory role would come with a modest title, no team, and the unspoken expectation that I'd eventually leave quietly. I see, I replied, my voice betraying none of the fury building inside me. And who will be taking over the quantum encryption project? The project I conceptualized, pitched, and spent 3 years developing. Adam brightened, relieved I wasn't making a scene. Ethan Zhao, you know him, right? Brilliant kid from your team. MIT, incredible coding skills. He's really impressed the board with his vision for where the project could go. Ethan, my protégé. The brilliant kid I personally recruited, trained, and mentored. The one I'd shared my unpublished research with over late-night coding sessions and weekend brainstorms. Ethan is certainly talented, I acknowledged, maintaining professional composure while mentally cataloging every vulnerability in the security architecture I'd designed. When does this transition take effect? Immediately, Adam replied, sliding a folder across his desk. HR has prepared a generous severance package if you prefer to make a clean break rather than take the advisory position. Either way, we'll need you to transition your projects by the end of the week. The severance package would have covered my expenses for 6 months, a small price for them to pay for my intellectual capital, my institutional knowledge, and my dignified silence. I didn't take it. Instead, I accepted the advisory role, spent a week meticulously documenting my work while secretly copying research that legally belonged to me but contractually belonged to Nexus. Then submitted my resignation citing personal reasons. Adam seemed relieved. Ethan seemed uncomfortable but ambitious enough to overcome any loyalty to his mentor. The rest of the team sent a tasteful bouquet and a card signed with generic well wishes. 12 years reduced to flowers that would wilt within days. I didn't waste time on bitterness. The night after my last day, I sat in my apartment surrounded by whiteboards and emptied my retirement account of $317,842. The financial advisor on the phone strongly advised against this decision, citing tax penalties and the recklessness of liquidating long-term investments. I understand the implications, I assured him. Process the withdrawal. Next, I sold my Tesla for $68,000 cash. Significantly below market value, but enough to bring my total capital to just under $400,000. I needed operating runway, and I needed it immediately. My former colleagues, would have called me irrational, impulsive, possibly having a midlife crisis. They would have been wrong. What I was doing was applying the same analytical thinking to my career that I'd applied to encryption problems for over a decade. When a system fails catastrophically, you don't patch it. You rebuild it from first principles. I rented a small warehouse space in Oakland, purchased servers and computing equipment, and set up what would become the headquarters of Adamant Security. The name was my private joke, both a reference to the unbreakable protection my software would provide and a subtle acknowledgement of who had pushed me to this point. For the next 18 months, I worked in near isolation, developing what the tech press would later call the most significant breakthrough in data encryption since quantum computing. But that came later. During those months, I lived on ramen noodles, caffeine, and mathematical determination. The breakthrough itself is difficult to explain to non-specialists, but essentially, I created an adaptive encryption algorithm that could predict attack methodologies before they occurred. While conventional security reacted to threats, my system anticipated them through pattern recognition and probabilistic modeling. The irony wasn't lost on me. Being labeled too old to innovate have freed me to create something revolutionary. By month 14, I had a functioning prototype but was running dangerously low on funds. The remaining $42,000 in my account wouldn't last much longer, and the patent application process alone would cost nearly half that amount. It was time to seek investment, but I approached this strategically. Rather than pursuing traditional VC firms who might prioritize Nexus's interests due to existing relationships, I reached out to Catherine Lin, founder of Veridian Technologies, known for both her technical expertise and her contentious history with Adam Reynolds. Our meeting was scheduled for 30 minutes. It lasted 4 hours. This is either complete genius or elaborate science fiction, Catherine said after I'd walked her through the technical specifications. If it works as described, every major technology company, government agency, and financial institution in the world will need it. It works, I replied simply, and I can prove it. The demonstration was compelling enough for Catherine to offer $5 million for a 20% stake in Adamant Security. I counter-offered at 15%, knowing the true value of what I created. We settled at 18%, with Catherine taking a board seat and providing introductions to her extensive network. Within 3 months, we had our first client, a mid-sized financial technology company desperate for protection after a devastating data breach. 6 months later, we had 10 clients, including 2 Fortune 500 companies and a European government agency. Nexus Technologies remained completely unaware of my activities. As far as they were concerned, I had disappeared into obscurity, perhaps taken early retirement or found a comfortable teaching position. That changed on a rainy Tuesday in November, 27 months after my dismissal. The call came from Catherine. "Adam Reynolds is trying to reach you," she said without preamble. "Apparently, Nexus has been experiencing some unusual security challenges they think you might help with." I smiled at the euphemism. Unusual security challenges was corporate speak for we're being systematically hacked and can't stop it. How did they trace Adamant back to me? I asked, genuinely curious. I'd been careful to maintain a low profile, serving as CTO while Catherine handled the more public-facing aspects of the business. "They didn't," Catherine replied, amusement evident in her voice. "They have no idea you founded a security company. They're reaching out to former employees with relevant expertise, and your name naturally came up. Ethan Zayoff suggested they contact you." The perfect symmetry of the situation wasn't lost on me. The brilliant kid who had taken my position was now recommending they ask for my help. "What would you like me to do?" Catherine asked. I considered my options carefully. Vindictive satisfaction would be refusing the meeting, letting Nexus suffer the consequences of their decision. Strategic advantage would be taking the meeting, learning about their vulnerabilities, and using that knowledge to further refine Adamant's products. But there was a third option, one that would satisfy both personal and professional objectives. Set up the meeting, I decided. But not with Adam. I'll meet with their technical team only, and I'll require a comprehensive NDA that protects Adamant's interests. 2 days later, I walked into Nexus Technologies for the first time in over 2 years. The receptionist didn't recognize me. The security guard issued me a visitor badge, asking me to spell my name twice to get it right. In the conference room, I found Ethan Zhao and 3 security engineers I didn't recognize. Ethan had aged, not physically, but in the worn expression of someone carrying excessive responsibility. When he saw me, genuine relief washed over his face. "Dr. Patel," he said, standing to greet me. "Thank you for coming. We've been facing some complex challenges." "So I understand," I replied neutrally. "I've reviewed the NDA and am ready to proceed." For the next hour, they detailed the attacks Nexus had been experiencing, sophisticated, targeted breaches that somehow anticipated their defensive measures before implementation. Their quantum encryption project, my quantum encryption project, had stalled, hampered by conceptual limitations they couldn't overcome. "It's as if the attackers can see our security architecture from the inside," one engineer explained. "We change our protocols, and within hours, they've adapted." I nodded, saying little, asking precise questions that led them to reveal the full extent of their vulnerability. It was worse than I'd imagined. Not only was their security compromised, but the fundamental approach they'd taken after my departure was fundamentally flawed. "What's your assessment?" Ethan asked finally, the strain evident in his voice. "Your current security architecture is unsalvageable," I stated matter-of-factly. "You need to implement a predictive defense system rather than continuing with reactive measures." "Predictive defense? Is that even possible with current technology?" one of the younger engineers asked. "It is." I opened my laptop and displayed a simplified version of Adamant's system architecture. "This is what we've developed at Adamant Security." The room fell silent as they processed both the technical information and the revelation that their former colleague now led a competing security firm. "You founded a company?" Ethan asked, his expression a complex mixture of admiration and consternation. "I did," I confirmed. After identifying certain career limitations here, I decided to pursue independent research. The implication hung in the air, unaddressed but unmistakable. Can Adamant help us? Ethan asked directly, professional enough to focus on the crisis at hand rather than the uncomfortable history between us. We can, I replied, but not under a consulting arrangement. Nexus would need to become a client of Adamant Security, with standard terms and conditions. Adam won't like that, one of the engineers muttered. That's unfortunate, I responded, gathering my materials. But the alternative is continuing to watch your security infrastructure fail systematically. I imagine your clients might have opinions about that as well. I left them with Adamant's standard contract and my business card. In the elevator, I allowed myself a small smile, not of vindication, but of professional satisfaction. I had built something valuable enough that the company that discarded me now needed my help. 3 days later, Adam Reynolds himself called. Mira, he began, his voice carrying that forced warmth executives use when they need something. I understand you've started a security company. Congratulations. Thank you, Adam. What can I do for you? I've reviewed the proposal you left with our team, he continued. While the technology seems promising, the terms are problematic for us. Perhaps we could discuss a more customized arrangement, maybe involving some equity exchange or even acquisition talks. Nexus has always valued innovation, as you know. The subtext was clear. He was offering to buy Adamant rather than become our client. It would allow Nexus to absorb my technology while saving face. I'm afraid Adamant isn't for sale, I replied evenly. Our standard client agreement remains our only offering to Nexus. Mira. Adam's voice took on a harder edge. Let's be practical. We both know there might be questions about the intellectual origins of Adamant's technology, given your previous work here. So there it was, the veiled threat. Imply potential IP litigation to force compliance. That's an interesting perspective, Adam. Our attorneys have thoroughly documented the independent development of our technology, but I understand your concern. Perhaps it would be best if Nexus sought security solutions elsewhere. The silence on the line stretched for several seconds. The client agreement, he finally said. Send over the final version and we'll sign today. Nexus Technologies became Adamant Security's highest-paying client, implementing our system across their entire infrastructure. The attacks ceased within weeks. Their stock price, which had been declining due to security concerns, rebounded sharply. 6 months later, Catherine brought news that changed everything. Google is interested in acquiring Adamant, she announced during our weekly strategy meeting. Initial offer is $1.2 billion. The figure hung in the air between us, representing a validation I hadn't realized I still needed. They want you to stay on as chief security architect. Catherine continued. 5-year contract, full research budget, complete technical autonomy. I thought about the journey from the humiliation in Adam's office to building something valued at over $1 billion in less than 4 years. About emptying my retirement account and selling my car to fund a vision no one else could see. About proving, definitively and irrefutably, that innovation had nothing to do with age and everything to do with perspective. Schedule the meeting, I told Catherine. Let's hear what they have to say. The acquisition closed 3 months later at $1.4 billion. My share, after Catherine's stake and other minor investors, was just over $1 billion. The press release announced me as pioneering security researcher Dr. Mira Patel, who would lead Google's new advanced security division. On the day the acquisition was announced, I received a text message from Ethan. You deserve better from us. Congratulations on building something remarkable. I appreciated his acknowledgement but found I no longer needed it. The validation I'd once sought from Nexus had been rendered irrelevant by what I built without them. 2 weeks later, attending a technology conference as one of the keynote speakers, I encountered Adam Reynolds in the hallway between sessions. His company badge identified him now as strategic advisor, the same role he'd once offered me. Corporate fortunes change quickly in technology. Mira, he greeted me with the careful deference people show to those who have demonstrably surpassed them. Remarkable achievement with Adamant. If I'd known what you were capable of. You did know, I interrupted gently. That was never the issue, Adam. I left him there in the hallway, moving toward the stage where I would present Adamant's technology to an audience of industry leaders. The greatest revenge, I've discovered, isn't showing others what they missed. It's creating something so significant that their opinion becomes irrelevant. Every dismissal, every underestimation, every closed door became fuel for the determination that built adamant. When I speak to young technologists now, especially women navigating male-dominated industries, I tell them this: your value isn't determined by those who fail to recognize it. Sometimes being underestimated is the greatest competitive advantage you'll ever have. After all, no one watches the person they've dismissed as too old to innovate, which gives you all the freedom in the world to prove them catastrophically wrong.